quality people, very high quality posts, videos, downlinks, libraries, PDFs, whole communities, personals, want ads, everything's in there. It is basically a truther hub, and it's growing very fast. So it's ARCHAIX Underground. It's a 7-day free trial. Go in there, check it all out, and see everybody who's in there, people from all over the world, and it's pretty exciting times. And I'm steadily uploading more and more content in it, but it's not just me. It's hundreds of other people are doing it too. So anyway, did you get it settled, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. It should be streaming from my channel now as well. So welcome,
I have never
everybody
done that.
from both places.
I've never done that. I've never figured out how to do that in the settings. One of these days, Big John will come over here and figure it out because I don't have the patience for it.
It's good to have a Big John to help.
Yeah, man, it is. It is. So you got really good audio. From what I understand, you're somewhere in Spain, right?
I am indeed. Yeah, I'm on the Costa Blanca. It's basically, if you look at Ibiza, it's to the left of that, and I'm on that point that sticks out there.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I was just showing a few fossils from Spain yesterday, or one of my presentations. Not much. It's very interesting. The Mediterranean, unlike the Americas, the Americas are fossil rich, but around the Mediterranean, it's not that way. It's actually kind of rare to find fossils on the surface. Kind of makes you wonder if the entire Mediterranean area was something else before. And the Americas, I don't know why, but on the surface, on the Americas, we are just fossil rich. It's crazy. But
I remember you talking in one of your videos long ago about the Mediterranean being far lower, and that there were cities with huge populations throughout what we call the Mediterranean now. So maybe the reason there's so few fossils is, if that was the case, is that what we think of as the mountains now would have been the peaks.
Right, no doubt. There's no doubt. That's why Greece looks the way it does, with so many hundreds, maybe even little thousands, little tiny islets, small islands and all that, and poor soil, not a lot of vegetation, almost no forests. Yeah, Greece was it was certainly the tops of mountains. But yeah, there's David Hatcher Childress had cited some archaeologists that posted their research materials that we'll probably never get around to it. But there are 300 stone cities that have been documented with their locations, longitude, latitude, coordinates, underneath the waters of the Mediterranean, and that the area used to be called Middle Earth long before it became, Mediterranean. And it was all freshwater lakes and more land than water. But that's not the way we find it now. Yeah, it's under salt water now, no doubt.
With lots of hobbit and troll fossils and.
Oh yeah. Oh, Middle Earth. J.R.R. Tolkien, who actually told us, he gave us a little bit of truth in the Silmarillion when he started talking about the vapor canopy, the twilight period when there was no sunlight, when the world of the elves and all that. J.R. Tolkien was somebody. He was a friend with C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, they were both members of the Inklings. And there was a guy named Charles Williams, I think, as well. He was an occultic writer. 3 of them, and probably some others. They used to meet and read the latest chapters they'd written of their books together. That would have been fun to be a fly on the wall in that room.
That's pretty intriguing, man, that you would have mentioned that. Later on in this video, let's talk about later on, after we discuss some of these things, I have some questions for you, but on biogeology, and which is your specialty. But later on, let's talk about, we both had books published recently. Just this week, my new Chronicon. I've been waiting like 20 years for Chronicon to be published, but my publisher couldn't handle. It's just too big. It's too massive of a work. So we broke it into 4 different manuscripts. And book 1 is the first 3,000 years of the pre-flood world. So it's massive too. So I just had a book release, but I understand you did too, and I want to talk about that later in this video. Let's see. So what's been going on with you in the past? It's been a year. It's been about 13 months. 13 months, I believe.
2 years. It's been 2 years. I checked the date yesterday. I was watching the video we did, just see what we covered. And
man, I lose track of time.
I totally. It's been a really crazy 2 years for me. Lots of work with the research, and then I've been invited to speak at a lot of different events. Been to 6 different events in the last 2 years, and 3 of them were in the last month. So I have had a crazy schedule. I was 2 weeks in Australia. I got back for 1 day to Spain, went to Liverpool in Serbia. The event that I attended in Australia was called the Living Free Festival. Really just incredible events with musicians and speakers covering a wide range of topics, and really high caliber, messages and information. And
did you meet Campbell?
No, Campbell wasn't there, actually. I didn't.
Okay.
I totally slipped my mind he was in Australia. So
Australia is a very big place.
It is. Yeah. I got to see a little bit of it, and what I saw was phenomenal. This was in the New South Wales, Byron Bay, up to Brisbane, that region in there. And I got to stay in the bush and see loads of animals I'd never seen before. And it was just magical experience. I went with my daughter. And then Liverpool, this is my 2nd time attending that event. That's also, it's a truth freedom event, and some really awesome speakers were there. Mark Devlin was there. Stephen Young was there. Myself, Gareth Ike, David Icke's son, and a host of other people. And then from there, I came back, worked 2 days in my office, and then went to London for the Illuminate and Elevate conference in East Grinstead. Wow. And got to hang out with Mark Devlin a bit more. Andy Kaufman was there, as was Martin Liedtke. And so that was an awesome weekend event, and then came back from that and tried to recover from all the travels in time for a massive party that just ended yesterday. My friend Alex Michael, conspiracy music guru, might have heard of him.
I've already got him scheduled. He's coming on the channel. I really don't know who he is. I don't know who he is,
make sure you go to his music videos and sort by oldest, and start with the first one and work your way through, and you will be blown away. He's awesome, and incredibly talented musician. So he had a party with about, I don't know, maybe 70 people there, and a lot of the speakers who were in London attended. I got to hang out with Martin Liedtke again there, and Andy Kaufman, and Steve Young was there, and Don Lester, and just some.
I know some of these names,
awesome
but
people.
I don't seem to be in this community, because I vaguely know Devlin's name has come on my radar multiple times, and I believe John's been in communication with him. He's either already scheduled for next month sometime, or we're still working out scheduling. Mark Devlin, I don't really know him, but I know Big John's been talking to him.
He covers truth in the music industry, and the intelligence and occultic influences on all of that. And he's written 4 books called Musical Truth. And he's just an incredible speaker. And during the pandemic times, he was one of the real heroes when it came to speaking his mind, and a lot of what he said got traction in larger audiences until the algorithms kicked in. So I can warmly recommend his work, and and all of the others I mentioned. They're just fantastic, all in their own right.
Oh, Big John said that Mark Devlin is scheduled October 1st. So it's a week from now.
So I must be hanging out with the right people if they're all coming on your show. So
yeah, man, something's going on. I don't know what's happening, but it's okay with me. It's okay.
Well, it was an incredible coming together this weekend with amazing music, and just the vibes. Everyone was so overjoyed to do the event, and then yesterday I led a group of about 12 people up to the Eye of Mont Go, which is the mountain, the elephant mountain that we discussed last time we talked, and just showed them, along the way, different key features, and then got up into the eye, and there's just so much there to see. So it was well appreciated and a lot of fun.
Yeah. You've been moving around. I slowed my travel down this year. I did a lot of meetups last year and the year before, but this year, aside from a few trips to Vegas, and I went to Glenrose to the Dinosaur National Park to go see what was in their museum, and and go look at the fossils in the Paluxy River Basin. But other than that, I really haven't done much as far as travel. I'm just kind of trying to slow down and work on me a little bit and my property. But I
So
already know, man, that travel taxes you.
a-
It taxes you, man.
So you took a deep dive into pseudoscience, huh?
Yeah, man. I'm so anti-uniformitarian. I can't help it. I do have I still have trouble grasping, like my first dive into biogeology was, of course, through I had him on my channel. I can't, my memory's terrible right now because he's
Roger?
not so, yeah, Roger. I didn't want to just call him Mud Fossil University because he's been on my channel. I just couldn't remember his name. But Roger and I have been in communication, and that was my first exposure to it. And I wasn't offended. I wasn't offended because in the ARCHAIX model, from what I gather, is there has been a cycle, a vapor canopy cycle, and it accounts for many of the mysteries of the ancient world. These scientific anomalies that they make up stories to account for the evidence when there's something more easily there. But under these vapor canopy conditions, I can see what you guys are talking about in the biogeology department, because there are organisms that are gigantic today. I mean, most people who've looked into this, they know about what is it, 2,200 acres of fungus in Wyoming, the largest organism in the world. I mean, it's still alive today, and most of it's underground. Most of it is all underground, and it shoots up, and people see evidence of it through mushrooms and mushroom shoots. But
I think it's probably in Washington, what you're thinking of, because Wyoming is pretty desert-like, and mushrooms don't
okay, yeah, it might be
thrive there.
Washington. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's said to be the biggest organism on Earth.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Oregon. It's a national forest in Oregon. Yeah, but it's the nickname is the humongous fungus. That's the nickname for it. But it is the largest living organism in the world, and scientists are still at odds about how old it really is, which is interesting to me because we have all these giant dawnwood pines, bristlecone pines, coastal redwoods. We have these three species of gigantic trees that are only found right there in the Sierra Nevadas and on the West Coast. But right there in the same, the sequoias and Sequoia gigante, these are huge. But so's this fungus. They say at the bare minimum it's 2,400 years old, but it could be as old as 8,000 years old. But it's a massive living organism, huge fungus.
There's fungus among us.
Yes, man, there's fungus among us. I'm not adverse to gigantic living organisms. I'm not. I have issues with some of the. I'm not processing what you guys are really laying down. So I'm going to want a real good description today of biogeology, and maybe we can go into how why sedimentary rock, which is limestone, sandstone, shale, is different from igneous rock, which the igneous rocks are all the basement rocks, which are basalts and obsidians and your granites. Why these are different from metamorphic rock, and what does this mean in biogeology that we have these three? Well, there's really four. You got conglomerate too, but really there's three major classifications for rock in the world. There's a fourth and a fifth, but they're so small. So what does this mean in biogeology? Is the Earth one giant living organism, and the outer shells just get old and become stone? Educate me on
that brings in the question of, is the Earth itself a living organism, a being of some sort? And but what you were just talking about is the cycle of petrogenesis, which is the creation of rock, and that's the mainstream narrative, is that we have these three types of rock: the sedimentary layering, which is your dead animal and plant life that create the forest floors, and eventually that compresses into more and more compact layers as time goes on. And that's where they're finding the fossils, in the different layers, and they determine the age of the layers by the fossils that are in them.
Yeah, total circular reasoning.
Yeah, and then the age of the fossils by the layer they're in. Yeah, exactly. So then as that pressure increases, then things start to melt and harden, and that's your metamorphic rocks. That would be like your marble and your granite. a lot of these rocks have like swirls in them, and
Yeah, they do.
but
Yeah, they
but
do.
and if it gets compressed even more, then it melts properly, and that's what we call magma, right? And then the magma shoots up through fissures in the earth, and then pours out, and we call that volcanoes. And you can see the lava coming out, and when that lava cools, we call it igneous stone. And then a lot of the plant and animal life feed off of the minerals that are provided by that, and so that's your cycle of petrogenesis, and rinse and repeat. And that was what I thought, was the truth about the nature of the earth. When I saw all the diagrams where they're looking at cross sections of the earth, and they know this is the crust, and this is I don't even remember all the different layers, mantle, and then eventually you get to the core
Right.
of the earth. And it's always CGI images,
Well, yeah, it's just like
drawings,
space.
because they can't go there.
Yeah, it's just like space. We've never been down that far.
Right. Yeah, the deepest hole ever dug was only 8 miles, and it took them
Yeah.
20 years to do it, and they were trying to guess what was coming each step of the way, and they were constantly wrong. So that was the Kola borehole in Russia. And I've heard stories that they, eventually there were like screams and demonic voices, and they capped the thing, terrified, and decided it might be an opening to the pits of hell.
Yes, I heard that too. Which could have been actually, wind, could have been a flu under high pressure or something they were listening to, or could have been anything. Could be translated to screams when you're programmed to believe that hell is in the underworld. But yeah, I did read that.
In both models, things get really hot the further you go down.
Yeah. I did read the same thing. So I don't know where you got that information from, but I did read something similar that the Russians discontinued the project. And yes, it was reported that their audio equipment sounded like they were listening to hell. Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
Right. Maybe we should stop drilling. we don't want things to come up. Yeah, so that's the cycle of petrogenesis. And then you were asking about biogeology, and I know there's a lot of fans of Roger in here, and a lot of what I've done was the original ideas that sparked my investigations that led to the discoveries that I've presented on my channel were coming from people like him and Jay Dreamers, and Wakey did a video where he was challenging some of the mainstream narratives regarding just geology and the claims that geologists are making about petrogenesis and the age of things and that sort of thing. So, and then about 8 years ago,
I know Jay Dreamers. Who is Wakey?
He's an OG flat earther that did loads and loads of videos. I don't know where he is now. I haven't seen anything from him in years. He was taken off of everywhere, and then I think he was just on BitChute, and I don't know if he still makes videos, but he had a video called Geology Revived. And there were a lot of little tidbits that I got from that video that were interesting. Like there was a father-son team that were making their own coal in a short amount of time. So they were basically just taking a piece of wood, putting it in a metal pipe with a bit of salt water, and heating it for, I don't know, a week or two or something. And then out comes, coal that looks like it came straight from a coal seam. So we're not talking about charcoal from a fire. We're talking about tree leads to coal. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so trees under high compression mixed with salt water produces coal.
Well, I'm not sure if it was compression. They just had it in a tube, in a metal tube.
Well, that is interesting to me. Yeah. Have you seen the research of like William Corliss and a lot of the materials from American Arcana? What is the magazine? Oh, I can't remember. Smithsonian's got it too, where they find all these human artifacts inside coal seams. Have you seen that?
Yeah, even boats, I think. Haven't they
found
like
whole entire ships in coal seams?
I vaguely remember you talking about that last time we talked.
It makes absolute sense. If coal is a byproduct of salt water mixing with charred remains of forests, then shoot, there's a cataclysm right there. There's
throwing a little volcanic ash for good measure.
Yes, good. Yeah, you put your pumice in there and your volcanic ash. That's all. So I heard you just say something, and I need a little clarity. Your work is deviated from Roger of Mud Fossil. Is that what you just alluded to? So that's where I'm trying. That's where I'm going with. I'm aware of Roger.
What's the distinction between what he's saying and what I'm
That's
saying?
it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. You said it better than I did.
So I originally thought that when I started doing the investigations into the work with the mountain, and for those who don't know, I've spent a couple of years investigating a mountain here in Spain and documenting all the anatomic features that the mountain has. And it's not just anatomy, it's internal anatomy. There are caves that I've spelunked there. I've looked at the actual structure of the stones of the mountain. And there's a one-to-one match with anatomy in a way that there shouldn't be if it was just random chance. So this is way, way beyond pareidolia. Pareidolia is when you're looking at something and you see a face and there's not really a face there, you know, in the clouds or in wood or something. Yeah, it's a false pattern recognition, right? But actually there's another word, apophenia, which is a false pattern recognition, where you're recognizing a pattern and you think it's real, but it's not, because you don't understand what you're looking at. So those are kind of two sides of the same coin. One is visual, one is an actual pattern. And so initially I was looking at this mountain and it looks like an elephant. It's called the elephant by the locals. There's a restaurant named after it, you know, and I never once considered that it could potentially be until I came across the works of the guys that we were just talking about before. And so then I just thought, oh, what if, you know, I was already looking into all kinds of crazy ideas that the mainstream wouldn't even begin to ask. And I thought, okay, well, let's just play a game as an intellectual exercise. And as I started to look at it on Google Earth, I started to see a lot more features beyond just the look of an elephant. There was an eye socket in the right place. There was a quarter moon discoloration right where an ear would have attached. The cutouts between the head and the shoulder are curving in on both sides of the mountain. I looked at it from above. I could make out a rib cage. It was just like, after an hour on Google Earth, there was about 10 features. And I was like, this is nuts. So I got out my anatomy books. I started, you know, refreshing my memory. I work as a chiropractor, so I studied a lot of anatomy and histology in school. Histology is the study of tissue. So I got out the books and just started going, okay, what would I expect to find if I go back up to this eye, which I'd been up to many times? And I had a laundry list of cardinal features that are related to eye sockets, like the optic fissure and different points where the bones meet and the eyeball itself and all that kind of thing. And I wasn't expecting much, but I went up there and I had another list of 10 after that voyage. So I was like already at 20 after 1 week. That list has grown to over 50. It's comprehensive. I've looked with microscopy. I've looked above with using Google Earth as a drone, and actually someone has recorded some really good drone footage that I haven't had a chance to review yet. So I finally have some 4K footage available to me soon of the mountain. So I initially thought it was a mud fossil I was looking at, but I was confused. Like, that would mean that it would have to be buried in mud, which means that the earth level would have had to been, 780 meters higher minimum in order for that to petrify, according to the theories of Roger. And it didn't really make sense to me, because then where would all that earth go? So that means all the earth had to be there had to be much more earth, and now it's gone. But even if, that was granted, it just didn't make sense from a paramineralization perspective. He calls it nucleophilic replacement now. But the basic idea is that the water and the gas works its way out of tissues, or plant or animal tissue, and whatever has surrounded that material works its way in. So whether it's mud or volcanic ash or high mineral content waters, they're infusing and infiltrating the tissues of the creature or of the plant. And that is also the mainstream explanation for petrification. But that's what I was
going to say. It sounds just like fossilization, because that's when the tissue decomposes, it's replaced with calcium carbonate or surrounding silicates.
Silica.
Yeah.
So that's the mainstream explanation. But Roger's contribution to that, based on his own findings and his analyses of those was that that process can happen at a far more rapid rate. And that was a new idea for me, that maybe the Earth was not as young as we were taught, and that there might be truth to the myths and legends and fairy tales and these sorts of things. And he had lots of different examples that he was showing of what he considered to be case closed on mud fossils as far as evidence. And knowing anatomy and histology as I do, I was oftentimes going, nah, but some of the stuff he presented was compelling, and I thought it was interesting. A lot of people think I've tried to steal his thunder or replace him in some way. That wasn't the case at all. The real reason that I coined the term biogeology, or more appropriately, I appropriated it, because it was a term that was being used in the scientific literature to distinguish between the exchange between the geosphere, the biosphere, and the lithosphere. So there's like a percolation of material that goes up into the upper atmosphere, and different things happen. But most people have never even heard the term, but I thought it was a perfect term for distinguishing between mainstream geological narratives and alternative narratives when it comes to how stone has formed. So Roger has kind of cornered the market on mud fossils with Mud Fossil University. He's been around 10 years and produced probably thousands of videos. But several of the things that I was finding, and many more since then, didn't make any sense to me from a paramineralization or even a mud fossil perspective. They involved other things, whether it was high temperatures from volcanic activity, pyroclastic flows, infusion of volcanic ash with high mineral content waters. Just high mineral content waters, you spoke about that last time, boiling hot volcanic waters is enough to petrify things. And then if you add plasma to the mix, which is kind of your your area of expertise, then we're talking about instant petrification, depending on the forces involved, right? If you look at the Lichtenberg figures around the Earth, which are these fractal patterns that form when lightning strikes, you can see scars in people. If lightning hits them, it creates a fractal branching scar. Well, it does the same thing to the Earth. It scars the Earth, and you can see very, very big Lichtenberg figures, which they tell us are formed by little rivulets of river that converge into larger and larger branches, and then eventually become the main river. Right. I no longer believe that at all. And the biggest example of a Lichtenberg figure would be the Grand Canyon. It's identical to the other Lichtenberg figures. So if you imagine the kinds of forces involved in creating a Grand Canyon in a blink of an eye, what would that do to the rest of the world? And what would that do to bodies like ours? They probably would be around for, in short order.
Well, we do have from the historical record incidences of what were called thunderbolts that came from a blue sky when something unusual appeared in the sky and affected the motion of the sun. One incident is in the Old Testament where 185,000 Assyrian soldiers wearing metal armor were vaporized in a second. And the Israelites ran out of Jerusalem because they were holed up in their city, scared because the same army had just defeated Egypt, and they were passing by Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was going to be forced to pay a tax to the son of the emperor, who was named Sennacherib, an Assyrian general. And then all this incident happened. In the Apocalypse of Baruch, who was the scribe of the prophet Jeremiah, the Israelites ran out there and looked at the field, and they found the 185,000 suits of armor, but the people had been completely vaporized inside their armor. They found the shields, swords, helmets, all the metal. And these flux tube discharges, they are the subject matter of a lot of different authors' books. And I have actually seen subsurface interface radar 3D mapping of the Sahara Desert, where these lightning bolts have hit the sand, and it does exactly what you just described. It looks like tree roots that have turned into tektites. And they're
called fulgurites.
Okay, fulgurites.
Yeah, and they literally will stretch up. Like if it hits a beach, they'll stretch up in this fractal pattern, and are hardened in that.
Yeah, look like glass. They look like glass under like an X-ray. Looking at the X-ray pictures, the 3D. It's very interesting. But anyway, continue.
I was intrigued by the work of the Thunderbolts project, because they're proposing an electric universe model. There's still couching their theories in a heliocentric model, which I think is more would probably make sense if they abandoned that. You know, what you were referring to before also reminded me of, it sounds like the red star Kachina, blue star Kachina of the Hopi Indian, is that there's an event, whether it's the Phoenix event or the EMCO, the electromagnetic plasma changeover event. Something has happened that's, you know, like Graham Hancock would be talking about the Younger Dryas and comet strikes vaporizing North Atlantic ice shelves or something like that. But again, that's all couched in this heliocentric model, which I no longer buy.
I don't buy it either. I don't buy it either at all.
Yeah. So there's so many examples, and maybe there's also an anthropomorphization of, you know, like when we're looking at things like Medusa or Cthulhu and these mythical legends about beings that could petrify. What we're looking at maybe is an anthropomorphization of this plasma event, because if you think about the tendrils of plasma, it moves very much like the, you know, snake hair of Medusa. So it may be that those myths are just trying to speak to that event.
Yeah, I want to address the size. What was the size of every anatomical parallel between the rock structure that you saw on Google Maps that you're saying it looks just like, you know, a fossil of an elephant, and you found about 10 things that were anatomical parallels with the real elephant.
That was just from Google Earth. The list
that's what I'm saying. That's just from Google Earth.
The list is about 53 now.
Exactly. That's where I was going to go. Yeah. That's where I was going with this. You found 10 that were enough to make you look in anatomy books on elephants.
That was just the macro features. Yeah.
Good.
There's a line 50? That goes between the legs.
So you got about 50 data points.
The eye socket, its shape, its location, its structure, and all of the internal features comprises about 20 characteristics. The ear, which I didn't even know existed until I started the research, and I hypothesized that there might be a cave up there where this quarter moon shape was. That has probably 5 to 10 features as well. And then I started to get out my microscopes and look at the structure of the stone, because the whole mountain is made of limestone, and the mainstream narrative on how limestone forms is it's said to be compressed coral, mollusk, shellfish, and endo and exoskeleton.
Right.
So they're literally telling us limestone is made of bone, but they're giving us hundreds of millions of years of timeline and massive amounts of compression. Yeah. Now that kind of limestone does exist. It's known as coquina, and that's what Coral Castle is made out of in Florida. You know, the guy levitating the multi-ton blocks, and you can see those fragments of shellfish and coral and whatnot with the naked eye. So that is a type of limestone, but it all appears to be in some sort of a binder, like a conglomerate, right? This limestone is nothing like that. And I was actually mocked by a geologist who came across my channel and only watched the first video as far as I could tell, which was just an introduction to the idea. It wasn't actually presenting any of the research. Right. All the research is presented in parts 2 through 6 of that series that I did called Unveiling a Titan. First is just an opener. People can skip that because we're doing that now. But he saw the video and he's just like, this is a ridiculous notion, what you're talking about, because that limestone you're talking about is made of all these fragments of little beings. So that would be a deal breaker for my theory, because obviously our bones are not made of, you know, we might be eating these kinds of substances, but we're assimilating them, and that's creating our tissues, but the tissues don't resemble the things that we're eating, right? So if the limestone here did that would, like, okay, well, it's not a Titan. I would have given up on the theory. But I went out with a 1000x microscope to many of these stones, and there were 0 fossils embedded in them, 0. Even under microscopy.
Right.
So what we have is a kind of limestone that doesn't match the official narrative of how limestone forms.
Got you.
But what it does do, very interestingly, is it matches bone anatomy to a T, where there's 2 different kinds of stone. One are these thick blocks that are like 2-3 foot thick, which are in layers, and there's almost no channels in those blocks, except occasionally there will be a big channel. And that's exactly what our cortical bone does. The long bones of the body have these these layer-like, it's like layers of a tree rings, right? The osteons grow the bone in these thicker layers, and there's very little vascularity, which is the blood vessels entering in. But they protect the inside bone, which is known as trabecular bone. And trabecular bone looks like Swiss cheese, and it's fractal. And you can look at it with a naked eye and it looks like Swiss cheese, and you could look at it under a microscope and it does the same. And that's where our bone marrow is and our red blood cells are formed. And so I started looking at these stones going, this looks exactly like trabecular bone and cortical bone. And what are the components of the bone? What is the breakdown? And you start to find out that there are great similarities. And then the mainstream narrative is that it's literally made of bone. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, well, the earth all around is red. That's interesting. Blood, red, and it's filled with iron ore.
Yes, it is.
There's your hemoglobin, right? That's what makes the red blood cells red, is the iron that's in the hemoglobin in the blood. And then there's all of this quartz that can be white or yellow, and it's all over this mountain. And if you look at centrifuged blood and you remove the red blood cells, what you have is blood plasma. And when you break that down, you have these proteins, which are called albumin. If you remove all the water from that, it looks like quartz crystal flakes. So I was like, once again, finding a one-to-one correlation in a way that like either this is a simulation and it's, altering itself as I'm observing it and it's fucking with me, or there's something to this, because this is way beyond pareidolia or apophenia. Geologists wouldn't agree.
Right.
But
they're not going to agree at all. I get it. I would like to offer a scenario that takes your data into account. Okay. You haven't, first of all, what size are we talking about here? Mountain?
We're talking about a 3-mile-long creature that is currently 753 meters high. But if it was standing, because it appears to be laying down with its head tilted back. Right. And I have visuals for everything. I have a PowerPoint though, so I can very quickly. We'll look at anything later on, anything we talk about in this presentation, I can bring up visuals. So I'm not just making claims about it.
Let me offer a scenario that would make what you found absolutely plausible. One that is perfectly consistent with everything that I have already found to be true, what I've accepted to be true. So let's imagine we can go ahead and remove the entire concept that we are on a rock going through space, going around a star. We're going to just for the purposes of this mental exercise, just imagine a closed system under some type of dome through which controllers of the phenomena in the dome can freely observe, like a science experiment. So inside the dome, they build this beautiful Garden of Eden type world with these creatures. They build all, and they see how the ecosystem is. And for a period of time, they experiment with these creatures, and they have this. No humans have been inserted yet. No avatars have been created for the very intelligences that built this facility. You understand? They're still on the outside looking in, but there's a period of time which we would call the past from inside the dome. And inside the dome, what we were doing on the outside of the dome was building a world. But we had to do many things first. And one of the things was the initial world. Once we got the ecosystem perfect, once there was a great balance between all life forms, once we got this predator versus prey ecosphere working prime, and we've got weather phenomena and everything's working great, it was realized once we ran further simulations that at the present sizes inside the construct, when we build avatars for ourselves and introduce ourselves into the scientific equation, we're not going to have much of a world. We're not going to have much of a world to build in. So if we reduce everything by about 1,000, because you can do that if it's all pure programming, if we reduce everything to 1 in 1,000th of what its sizes were, we can also play with something else. Jay Dreamers calls it plasma apocalypse. Before him, other people were calling it the MCO event. I have documented it meticulously as the Phoenix phenomenon. I'm not claiming these are separate events. I am claiming that the MCO event in the scenario that Jay Dreamers provides is a systemic cleansing of the dome. It's not the Phoenix phenomenon. The Phoenix phenomenon goes through multiple of these cycles where whatever this phenomenon is, it only manifests locally or regionally for whatever areas. It is a checks and balances system for the continuation of operations within this dome environment. But what you found in what Roger of Mud Fossil has documented, you guys are finding the original sim when all of this was put together before they purged it so they could minimize everything, so they could build a world that could have whole populations in it, because that world in the dome would have been too big. If you've ever, I know you have, but many people listening to us, they've never experienced being at 35,000 feet and looking down at the top of clouds that are so tiny that you realize 2,000 feet is not that high. When you're at 35,000 feet, 2,000 feet altitude is not that high. So I can imagine life forms in another biosphere, because in ARCHAIX, that's what we do. We document different historical periods where different biospheres that our controllers were experiencing with. And some biospheres had humans growing long skulls under a different high pressure environment. And epiphyseal cartilage made them look Neanderthalic, but they were still human. So we were in this scenario here, I can see that you're actually finding topographical features from the very first world that was created within this construct. And then everything that I have documented, starting, because ARCHAIX only goes back to 5239 BC. We only go with the historical record, and we only go with all the chronological records. So I can only go back to 5239 BC. But by that time, the world that you're uncovering was already over. It was already over. And they had to minimize everything because the creatures that were that large required like 100% oxygen, content in the atmosphere. There's no way a creature that size could live in the world that we live in today, because it just wouldn't be able to breathe.
Yeah, the mainstream narrative for why those couldn't possibly have existed, these avatar trees or titanic beings, is that they would be crushed under their own weight because their bones wouldn't be strong enough to support the gravitational pull.
Yes, but that's marrying it all,
wobbling ball. Yeah, I mean, gravity is a whole discussion in and of itself, obviously, but that's called the square cube law, and that's the claim. Now they give us megaflora and megafauna, but they give it to us as as dinosaurs. Tell us dragons were myths. They tell us that everything was much bigger, and that insects were 100 times the size of what they are now, and so that's even in the mainstream. So these ideas aren't so far-fetched.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And I read the book The Holographic Universe by
Michael Talbot.
Yeah, like 30 years ago. And so that just resonated with me, and I sensed that, yeah, we're probably in a holographic universe, because if you look at things with a microscope, you have repeating patterns, and if you look with a telescope, it's repeating patterns in either direction. So no problem there. Then I discovered fractals, which are these mathematical algorithms that give rise to infinite universes just from a mathematical formula. So going back to your original question about size, when I came across Roger's analysis of the dragon in the Sahara, I mean, it's a far-fetched idea. It makes no sense on a spinning ball the size they tell us. And when people ask him about that, he gets triggered and blocks them, especially if they're flat earthers. And he never, to my mind, has ever properly answered the question of, how could something so big live on a ball so small? It would just walk around in circles, and, it would, if it's 1,000 miles long, that's 1/24th the circumference of the Earth, right? And so if it stood up, it wouldn't be able to breathe, and it certainly wouldn't be able to fly. So how does that work? I have no problem with that. If you think of the Earth maybe having outer realms, being just much larger than we were told. And obviously you have the Antarctic Treaty and probably a dome there. We have gas pressure, which can't exist without a barrier. There's no scientific experiment that can reproduce gas pressure without a barrier down here. It's just It's
Absolutely.
just gravitational gradient, and trust me, bro, from the mainstream scientific
Yeah.
community.
Hey, that's a good. Hey, you know, I might borrow that. Scientific world.
I got
Man,
it from
trust me, bro.
Witsit, so I can't claim credit for
Trust
it.
me, bro.
But
That's basically what uniformitarian is. Hey, man,
right.
everything is 300
Yeah.
million years old. Trust me, bro.
Evolution. Yeah. All of that. And
That's
so,
good stuff.
yeah. So when I saw Roger's stuff and I started thinking about, okay, 1,000 miles long, and I thought about this elephant, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That dragon, if it's real and it did exist, would be a fractal level up from this 3-mile long
Yes.
elephant.
Yes.
And so that was I started putting the pieces together in my mind, and that was what led to the initial inquiry. And I want to go back to what I started to say about why I coined the term biogeology, is that mud fossils are definitely a thing. I'm not negating Roger's work, and I'm not trying to steal his, thunder, but there are other ways that things petrify that he's not addressing. And also, very glaringly, he is denying the existence of the great trees. And there is more evidence for the existence of the great trees than any of the subjects that I cover. I cover the mountain,
So I need to interrupt for this right here. So for clarity, Roger's a great guy, right? But he's a great guy. But at the same time that he's admitting to 1,000 mile long like creatures, at the same time he is actually saying that there's no evidence that there were trees that were commensurate with the sizes of these creatures.
Right.
So he removes the forest, but leaves.
He says the Devil's Tower, for example, in Wyoming, which looks very much like tree stump, and that's a hotly contested subject, even in the truther community, about what it is and how it formed and whether it's from tree or not.
Yeah.
It's compelling visually, but it's not proof in and of itself. It's a data point. That's all it is. It's one data point. The question is, are there a ton of other data points, or is it just the tabletop mountains, that look like cut trees, and Devil's Tower and nothing more? And what I presented, many times on my channel, and the reason I've been invited to so many of these different speaking engagements is because I'm presenting a whole plethora of other data points that all perfectly dovetail, and I'm happy to show visuals for them later. And to deny the existence of the great trees while talking about a 1,000-mile long dragon in the Sahara on a 24,901 mile ball, to me doesn't make any sense. And then he's also referring to NASA footage. He's got grayscale NASA images, if you can trust anything out of that occultic lying organization.
Yeah, we don't.
And he's referring to their images as proof that what we think of as, asteroids and other things floating in space are actually Titan body parts. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea that there might be, an even larger fractal level than his dragon, and what would that look like? Planetary sized beings that maybe are floating out in space. But you can't trust NASA for your foundational stuff. And I have a hard time when people are just making constant claim after constant claim that there are other explanations that are more plausible. I don't want to get into a bash Roger session. I have a lot of respect for him. I wouldn't be doing any of this if it hadn't been for his information. I just think that it needs to be couched in a different cosmological model, and then it would start to make way more sense. His dream of getting accepted by the mainstream scientific community.
Model. He's absolutely married to uniformitarianism, and that's the problem. Yeah. His research
and Velikovsky and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So, it's just, planets in collision, or, that kind of stuff. So, but if it's a, potentially infinite realm, or at least, much larger than we were thought, the ancient cosmologies are the cosmic egg and the concentric spheres, which are the music of the spheres, and the luminaries were said to be within those spheres. Yeah. So we might be in the smallest of those spheres. And that may be what the barrier of Antarctica is. And then I heard there's a model from a guy named Martin Kenny. He presented the cosmic egg model many years ago. And he presented the idea that our sun and moon are binaries, and that Venus and Mars are another binary in an outer sphere, right? And that Jupiter and Saturn are another binary. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because when you look at it from above, it looks like growth rings of a tree. So we have all the in the ancient cosmologies, Yggdrasil, the Norse mythology, you have the the tree, and what we're looking at is a toroid when you look at a tree, right? You have the branches going up, and then you have the roots going down, and it's all looping back in on itself, just like the magnetic field does. So
hold on, you just mentioned Norse mythology. You cannot omit Ymir, because the Norse believed that the entire world was built out of a Titan. It says their world, the origin of the world itself comes from a fallen Titan, a Titan that had died, and they literally built their world on that Titan.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Norse mythology, and it's not dissimilar from the ancient Asian Oriental concept that our world is a living organism that is moving, and they described it as a tortoise, a giant turtle. But yeah, a whole world. So I mean, there's some parallels here.
I'd love to think about it. I mean, there's so many things that we can never really confirm for ourselves. We can't get outside of the construct, whatever it is, to prove anything definitively. But I think ultimately, flat versus globe is a false dichotomy. You know, they get people arguing. You get your factions, and it's, you know, everyone's calling everyone a shill. But it's really a unification of the two. If you think about the cosmic egg model, because you have the globe. You have the accretion disk of you know, the disk of land that we are on, and then you have and we have the aurora borealis spiraling. You know, that's probably just the etheric energy spiraling into the singularity that is Mount Meru, like that's at the center of the construct that's powering everything. You know, that there's old maps that seem to suggest that. There's a lot, and if you think about one of these plasma globes, just to go on a tangent with this. You were talking about great beings looking at a terrarium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if every once in a while they interact with that terrarium by touching it? Anyone's ever touched one of those Tesla ball globes?
Yeah.
The plasma goes to your finger, but it doesn't burn you because of the container, right? And so, and the more you touch, the more of that plasma is concentrated on a particular thing. So we have these electromagnetic phenomenon that have been photographed now. They were theorized first and then photographed, but you know, you have our electric storms that are happening down here with the big puffy white clouds. Way above that, you have this phenomenon known as sprites, which are moving in two directions, and there's like a line between those two directions, and that's at the Kármán line. That's at like 62 miles. So that's, some people think that's maybe where the enclosure starts, right? Or at least some sort of a barrier that keeps things from moving around. And then above
that's where Fishbowl's nuclear detonation was at. It was at the 60 mile, right around 60. They detonated, and they were expecting it to go into a sphere,
to go like a firework.
Out.
Instead, it went like a disc, almost like it was up against a surface, right?
Operation Fishbowl, 1962.
And so elves are another electrical phenomenon that's above the sprites, and that's exactly what they do. They start as a point and then they spread out as a ring. And so that's consistent also with this idea of there may be a physical barrier there. And so, you know, maybe if if we're just in a terrarium and we're the little ones, you know, that maybe the gods every once in a while interact with the realm. It's fun to ponder this stuff, but I'm not presenting it as fact.
Well, if you're in a simulated environment, then size doesn't even matter, because the environment can be minimized. You can minimize it to the degree that you can populate it with massive populations that don't even know that they're living in something that was actually magnified at, you know, to the 1,000th power in a previous version of the same simulation. So if we're dealing with some type of incredible spiritual technology, then we have to judge things by their effects. You did a fantastic job of putting 50 data points of anatomy on what looks like to be an elephant to you. And I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is that's the type of research we need. But it also shows that somebody else, like Roger of Mud Fossil, who has produced a lot of this phenomenon, whether his theories deviate from his findings, it doesn't matter to me. It's the fact that people are finding these shapes. So it's like the topography of our world, what we have mistaken. There are mountains and there are valleys. And then there are other things that you guys are finding that seem to have populated a world far before the version of the world that we're living in now.
Yeah, the Earth is not flat. The water is flat. The Earth has topography. So that's a misnomer right from the get-go. So once again, I think it should be a synthesis of multiple models, and maybe ultimately it's unknowable. But it seems like we've been downsized because we have the giants and we have all the legends and myths of the Titans, and maybe Roger's dragon is a real thing. And just to finish the point about biogeology is, again, it was meant, I realized that this is better as an umbrella term because mud fossils is going to mislead people in different ways, and it doesn't explain all of the different manifestations of the phenomenon, what we can actually see empirically in this realm. But if you're including petrification through volcanic activity, high mineral content waters, plasma, each one of those would be like that second level of the umbrella, the biogeology. So I think it's a better term, but take it for what it is.
Well, I mean, I'm totally on board. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are scientific principles that I just can't really find fault with, such as like the law of diminishing returns, the law of conservation of energy. And it would seem to me that if you were experimenting with life forms and you wanted to create a way to inject your own intelligence into your own experiments, you would create avatars that, here are the humans. This is why the human is so different than every other life form here. And it's here's the avatars we chose, and we volunteer for this experiment. And you would have to make everything with each sim. Everything would have to be made smaller than the sim before, because you started with a finite amount of space. There's a finite amount of space. Your containment field has never changed its perimeters. Therefore, let's just say it's a glass dome. If it's a glass dome somewhere else outside of this experience, the dome has never changed at all. But we think our world has changed. Like I say all the time, man, the whole sky is nothing but holographic. Multiple tiers. I describe it as a multi-tiered hologram, which is interesting because you just describe it as spheres where different luminaries that we call planets operate in those spheres. Well, this is very similar to what I have described too, from a more computerized. This is computer coding type holography. But anyway, what I'm saying is science does have some value. Scientific interpretation, we can throw it all out, but some of the principles that they go by, like the law of conservation of energy, would actually support what you're talking about. Life forms starting, earlier and much larger, and then producing everything we needed for a second sim, then a third sim, then a fourth sim, then a fifth sim. And with each version of the world, the best is taken from the previous versions and moved into the new version. This is why we don't have any intermediate fossils. We have no intermediate life forms. This is why we have such diversity. This is why we have really weird life forms living at the same time, such as Australia, Tanzania, southern parts of Madagascar, and New Zealand have marsupials, but they can't be found anywhere else in the world except for the opossum. And then we have the proto mammals. But if these life sims are being created, the population is increasing as well. With an increased population is the necessity to downsize one more time. So all this makes perfect sense to me. Your research actually adds, you and Roger, actually adds more clarity to some of the anomalies that I've been coming across, like such as these gigantic life forms, titans, and weird topographical features. So I'm totally on board.
Yeah, and what you were just describing is exactly how everything grows. Like everything from plants, the way the leaves fractal out, even a snowflake, as the snowflake is growing, it's getting smaller and smaller. So it's a repeating pattern, but it has to get smaller. Otherwise, those things would bump into each other, right? So it's doing the same thing, smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's just the nature of how things work,
Well, maybe the Japanese created the whole construct, because they're experts at making all our modern technology smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Totally.
I was just teasing.
I wanted to come back to, I was thinking about, the Watchers, the Nephilim, Noah's flood and everything, because you said something before that was interesting about what I appear to be looking at when I'm, with this research is the first round, of the sim, or of the earth. And I think that's interesting because, you know, the antediluvian era before the Noah's flood came, things were bigger, you know, even in the text it says that. Then we have this kind of avatar vapor canopy era, right? And that precedes the Noah's flood. Do you make guesses about how far before or how long that was?
A few centuries. A few years ago, I thought the whole pre-flood world was a vapor canopy, but it wasn't, because we actually have two different periods where vapor canopies appeared. But when vapor canopies collapse, this is when we get our worldwide flood traditions. And it's not that the whole world floods. There's flooding all over the world. But in the ARCHAIX model, we see that the whole polar cap myth of the ice ages, and the reason we have 1 to 2 mile ice caps and all that, those are created very fast. And when the mesosphere completely empties, we call it a great flood. And every time this happens, the sun comes out for a period of weeks or months and just burns the world, because whatever atmospheric protection was there, the collapse of the mesosphere basically causes it to become bereft. It's no longer a protection, and the whole world is muddy and wet, and the sun comes out and just burns it. This is why we have that's why we have all this panic. You see all these what they call dinosaurs are nothing but giant avians, like wingless birds and stuff like that. These three-toed creatures.
Reptiles.
Yeah, they're just reptiles and amphibians and avians. They call them dinosaur prints. And because so many people have accepted that, sometimes I have to say that in my videos, but most of my ARCHAIX veterans know I don't even believe in dinosaurs. It's all a myth. So we have giant reptiles, giant amphibians, giant avians, and we have megafauna, large marsupials. We have larger versions of every marsupial that's been found in Australia in the fossil record. They're huge, but this is during vapor canopy periods. Even the insects are bigger. These periods only last for 3.5, maybe 4 centuries, and it's a cycle. When that moisture is built up too much, it just falls out the sky. It collapses. Or something else happens, which is a little more harrowing, because we do have traditions of the entire sky at the Great Flood fracturing like glass, and then iceberg-sized pieces of the sky fell, followed by water, and then the sun appeared in the sky, which had formerly been blocked for centuries by the vapor canopy, and now it burns everything, which makes sense of why all these surface features were fossilized. All these human footprints, giant human footprints, all these avians, reptiles, and mammalian forms are all found on the surface, like I showed in yesterday's video, all fossilized, like they've just been there, facing the sun all this time, just waiting for us to discover them all over the world. So the vapor canopy is a cycle, and when all that moisture falls out the sky, it's considered in mythology the day the sky fell. When this happens, this is where religionists many centuries later invent great flood legends and say the whole world was flooded, and there's no evidence at all that the whole world floods. Flooding happens all over the world because water's falling out of the sky, but the whole world doesn't drown and go into flooding. But what's interesting,
I want to add to that, though, because there's obviously our clouds today can hold a ton of water, right? And so if you have an entire world that huge amounts of water are up in vapor, and that comes down, that could lead to worldwide flooding. But the other thing is, when we're talking about the great trees, the book of Jasher, the book of Enoch, even the Bible, it doesn't reference trees, but it references the Watchers and the Nephilim, and this idea that God sent the angels to go to work at the trees. So they brought down the trees, and this is prior to Noah's flood, and those trees lay there for a long period of time before the flood came. So they had time to decompose, and there was also time for the people who were still alive, who had probably lived in and on the trees, to start to carve into them, which would be your mesa dwellings and things like that, and a lot of the stuff that Paul Cook, says is 3D printed structures in the UK. I don't agree with that. He and I butt heads on several ideas and no longer speak. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But when you look at those structures, they exhibit the wood in every in every way, shape, and form. So I think they were carving into those structures. But the point I was going to make is that when they brought the trees down, if you've got trees that are many miles wide and are stretching up into the heavens, how much water would the trees contain? So it's not just the vapor that's floating in the air that would be freed up.
Yeah.
It's also all the water that would be contained in the trees. And then another thing about the wildlife raining down from above, right? These different, myths that, things that you've talked about. Well, if we're talking about a plasma apocalypse, what's going to get hit first? The tallest objects, right? Well, in the rainforest, something like 80% of the plant and animal life are in the tree, not on the ground.
Right, right.
So all of that wildlife that would have been up in those avatar-like trees would have just been hit and petrified and rained down like stone or, whatever else. So a lot of this stuff starts to make sense in the broader picture when you just look at the legends and what they're telling us. And I think you've been, fantastic at that. But you were just talking about not that there wasn't a worldwide flood. I think there very well could have been, especially if the trees were cut down, because all of that excess water is going to be freed up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, history is a very big place. And when I'm talking about the Great Flood, I'm referring to the biblical one, which is almost precisely dated at 2239 BC. I am aware that there was another massive flooding in 3439 BC, and even more so in 5239 BC. This is what we do in ARCHAIX. We document all these old records, show these calendars and how they unfolded, and how they literally give you the precise dates of major systemic resets, these events. But when you talk about the giant trees, when you talk about this elephant that's 2,000 meters high or whatever, to me, I am not
a mile tall.
A mile tall. I'm not equating those with anything in the
vapor canopy days.
Well, no, I'm not. No, this vapor canopy cycle goes back a long time. I'm talking about ARCHAIX only documents 5239 BC and after, because it is calendar based, and we have no human calendars that go before that. We have no records of traditions, timekeeping systems with traditions that attach to why people were factoring 600-year periods, 138-year periods, or why, like the Mayan long count, why were people factoring the 400-year periods, these portions of the Bactans? What was so important about all these little cycles and epicycles? This is what we've documented in ARCHAIX, and we can only go as far back as 5239 BC. To me, what Roger Mudfossil and you and others that are researching this, finding these gigantic life forms, to me, this is something in before recorded human history. Something before 5239 BC, and a vapor canopy would have definitely allowed those creatures to be that big. But like I said, it would be a previous version of the world we're living in now. The Great Flood could have been caused by something so simple. Imagine a vapor canopy world where the mesosphere is so packed full of water. This is the world that is described in Genesis. There was no rain. Moisture wasn't a problem, because when the sun passed over the sky, it was unseen. But under the vapor canopy, which increased atmospheric pressure, it increased the oxygen. The sky lit up a blue or a purple. People knew it was daytime. But at nighttime, something different happened. It was condensation. The sky misted as the sun disappeared, which you couldn't see anyway. The sky on the other side of the dome would clear out. Then the stars became visible at night, and then not only were they visible, what was left in the mesosphere created a giant magnification effect. And the ancients described they go up to a top of a hill and talk to the stars. They could hear the stars singing. So they believe they could reach up and touch to them if they find a hill tall enough. And the stars were magnified, and the moon filled the sky. It was a magnification effect. But if the flood was this easy, Mike, it was just so. Imagine controllers on the outside of the construct looking down and say, "Okay, it's time to collapse that mesosphere. It's time to go to the next phase of the experiment." All they would have to do is heat up the bottom plate of the dome, which might be 60 miles below. It doesn't matter. All they have to do is boil the underwater, caverns full of water tables. Water's everywhere in the underworld. All they'd have to do is increase the temperature in the underworld. By increasing the temperature of the underworld, there's going to be an exchange of information with the sky. There's going to be all kinds. This is what Genesis describes. The foundations of the great deep erupted forth and all the water boiled up. It wasn't just water falling from the sky. It came from two directions at the same time. Increasing the temperature would have done something to the sky and caused it to fracture like glass, and it fell. It's the day the sky. As a matter of fact, there's more traditions from the ancient world about the day the sky fell than there are about the great flood of Noah. Great flood of Noah is it's almost like an import. It is a tradition that was created ex post facto, but closer to the event itself, it was all about, the fear of the day the sky fell. And it's the reason humans were building underground facilities, living out of caves, anytime they suspected it was about time for the sky to fall. So I think it would be very easy. And it has nothing to do with the sky. It has everything to do with underground. Just increasing the subsurface temperature enough would create the volcanism. It would create the volcanism to spew all the ash into the mesosphere and to populate the mesosphere with aggregates that were so heavy the moisture couldn't stay suspended. And it would just be a domino effect. And in the end result, great flood.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking the Book of Enoch talks about the Titans and talks about them, the angels going to work at the trees, because obviously they wanted. God sent the angels to keep the corrupted beings that he was purging with the flood from being able to climb the trees to escape the flood waters. So that's why the trees were brought down. But
isn't there a reference in Enoch to the watchers being called trees? Or is that in other Judaic literature, there's a reference to fallen angels being called trees. I'm almost positive of it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm gonna find it for you.
Well, I don't know how the trees would go to work on themselves, but the point I was going to make is that the Book of Enoch actually gives at one point a dimension to the Titans, and it says that they were 3,000 ells tall. And I don't know what the individual measurement of a single L is, but 3,000 of them is a mile. So the Book of Enoch is literally talking about Titans that are the size of this mountain that I investigated, which is pretty interesting. So then the dragon in the Sahara would be a fractal level up from that. And that's also apparently spoken of, the battle between the Leviathan and the Behemoth that took place in that part of the world is written about by one of the ancient Greek writers. Hold
on. Say that last part again.
That the battle between the Leviathan and the Behemoth.
Oh, yes, in the Book of Job.
That took place exactly where Roger's dragon and fish are battling it out, was spoken of, in one of the ancient Greek texts as well. So that was why I kind of opened my mind to it. If the legends are actually talking about this thing that you could only see from space, right, or whatever,
right,
from high altitude, then how would they even know what that structure looked like? Unless there was other ways of knowing.
Yeah, I had to look that up because it was really bothering me. There is a reference in Ezekiel chapter 31 where the prophet, as a metaphor, describes Pharaoh in two ways. Part of the passage, he's describing Pharaoh as actually being led by Satan or Lucifer. And in the other parts, he's describing Pharaoh as being a great tree that overshadows the world.
Right. And that's one of the passages that people talk about when they're criticizing the idea that the great trees existed, that the things that people who are in favor of the trees are referencing are these texts that are actually potentially metaphoric rather than literal. Okay. Maybe they're both at the same time. Oftentimes we're trying to pick a side, and it might be a synthesis of things. Just like
so, have you ever come across the theory? Have you come across the theory that, like Arizona, the petrified forest in Arizona that a lot of people say that a lot of that petrified wood that's all scattered because it's on the surface. It's some of it's beautiful agate, topaz, some of it's semi-precious stones now, but a lot of people are saying that those aren't tree trunks, those are just branches from the great trees that the stumps are left behind in Arizona for everybody to see. I don't
Right.
know.
Well, there's a bunch of things to say about that. I mean, first of all, I think the largest petrified tree in diameter is said to be something like 8 feet. So
Wow.
we're talking about not if we're
It's not
talking
very
about
big.
trees that were miles wide at the
Yes.
base, and then that wouldn't even be a branch. That would be like the tiniest
A
of
twig.
twigs.
So what we're
But
dealing
I think those are smaller forests that petrify.
absolutely. So we're
Those
dealing
were
with a different sim period. Yes.
right. And those were found all over. Now we have a couple key spots where tourists can go and pay to look at the petrified trees and buy a little chunk, you know. But there were, you know, Ben from the archivist Waking Up with Analog, he's sent me a number of newspaper articles from 100 years ago where they were harvesting those petrified forests. They were all over the place, not just where they are now. And when they were harvesting them, they had high quantities of gold, silver, copper. All the metals were in the trees. And I don't think that's because that the trees were growing the metals. I think that there was a transmutation that took place as a result of the event. And whatever was in the tree was converted into different kinds of metals through a transmutation process that mainstream science doesn't acknowledge. But if you know, it's a whole other idea about how the periodic table of elements came about. If it's not from exploding suns, you know, and gravity, then how is it? And I think that our periodic table is coming from biology ultimately, like maybe all of it, right? This ties into, like, you know, the works of people like Walter Russell. He's got a whole other cosmological model, and his periodic table, in my mind, makes way more sense than the one we've been given. I think the one we've been given is usable, but it's specifically designed to keep people off the scent of what the true nature of our reality is when it comes to the physical world and chemistry and physics and that sort of thing.
Wow. Are you familiar with Nivenite?
No, never heard of it.
Nivenite is one of the new elements that was added. Like in the 1950s, 1960s. It's from William Niven, but they gave this. He's a scientist. This is the duplicity of the scientific community. This man actually finds a whole new element, and they honor him, and they call it Nivenite. And this is in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. His name is William Niven. And Nivenite's not the only new one he found, but they gave him Nivenite and named it after him. But at the same time, they almost erase the man from history, demonize him, won't publish his books because outside of Mexico City at 60-foot depth, he was excavating with a team and he come across a pavement after going through 3 alternating levels of lava, occupation levels, volcanic pumice, and he finds a city with pyramids and human skeletons. Everything's intact. And then he comes across a mastodon skeleton with the humans at the level of a pyramid city, and they shut his ass down. And most people have never heard of William Niven and his contributions to society because this has happened over and over. These guys are trailblazers. They go out there and they find all this stuff, and then history just doesn't record them because what they're finding isn't it's not what the scientific community want the public to know. Yeah, I'm famous for the tangent.
Ben, again, from the archivist, he's, you know, gone through tens of thousands of articles, and he's done a series called Anomalous America. He's halfway through the country. Each episode is a state, and he's broken down the most interesting articles that he found over, you know, a decade of reading the digitized old newspapers before the Rockefellers, you know, took over the publishing and bursts and everything. Back when you were getting the real stories, they're speaking matter-of-factly about multiple levels of civilization, about all kinds of different petrified, you know, finds, about cryptids, about all kinds of creatures of different types. And, you know, it paints an entirely different picture of our history than what we've grown up, you know, taught to believe.
Absolutely. Up until 6 months ago, you could have never convinced me that dark age in the chronological time period of the Dark Ages, Native Americans were living with, domesticating, and eating what we're told in museums are prehistoric creatures that all died 65 million years ago. You'd have never been able to tell me that. But now that I've seen the artifacts
and turned to crude oil.
Yeah, man. Now I've seen all the deals. Man, now that I've seen Renaissance paintings with anatomically correct brontosaurus before 1841, they even discovered what they first started calling dinosaurs. You know what I mean? It's just the whole narrative is absolutely falling apart. I am convinced that what we're told the Dark Ages, it's literal, because in the 6th century AD, all historians there's no controversy here. Historians do admit that the worst century in recorded human history to live through was the 6th century AD. This is widely published, and there's all kinds of reasons why. But there's a 25-year period called the Justinian Darkness period. Man, it's everything. It's meteorites, comets, dragons fighting in the sky. It's plagues, it's warfare, it's strange. People just going crazy, doing all kinds of things, and it's all independently recorded in all these different places. But it seems like establishment history doesn't want to put it all together in one deal. But it is the event that started the Dark Ages, and the Dark Ages lasted for about 440 to 480 years. Well, I believe that period was a vapor canopy period because at that exact same time period, we do have a 522 AD, we do have something very unusual happening in the sky. And it is dated 522 AD. Over England, there appeared to be 2 giant sky dragons fighting over the sky. And it just spread over the sky. It spread over the lands of the continents. Then both hemispheres were reporting it on both sides of the Atlantic. And it's so strange. But I believe it was a vapor canopy world. And I believe it's the last one. And I believe it's coming out of that vapor canopy world were navigators who mapped out all of South America, Patagonia, all the islands down there in the Antarctic. Antarctica was mapped. They know exactly. I mean, these maps show the valleys, the mountains, the rivers. All that is under ice pack today. You know, Greenland is shown with no ice on it whatsoever, and all that's very, very easy to do during a vapor canopy period. But once that vapor mesosphere collapses, all that humidity falling from the sky snows, and the ice pack is created very, very fast. It's a cycle. But yeah, it's the last one is the reason. The last one is one that explains all the mysteries for me. And it just blows my mind. So I'm saying all that to say that you're not bringing anything to my community that isn't already plausible within the paradigm of ARCHAIX, because this is actually supporting. The further back we look, the larger everything is.
Well, and I could say the same about Roger's work. Like, you know, I criticize some of the things that he says, but actually there's no other channel out there that's provided more information in confirmation of the things that he's saying. I just think he's putting it inside the wrong, you know, cosmological model, to the point where a lot of things start to sound absurd. Going back to Ezekiel, and also this relates to Roger as well, because, you know, of the tree topic, that, you know, you could metaphor or literal. I'll tell you right now, I've seen the sites with my own eyes. I went last July. I was in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I was in Denver, and I traveled with Mike Alley, who's Hangman 1128. He's been producing the best footage and videos about the great trees for the last 7-8 years. And he took me to all of the best sites that he's found in those years. So I got to get up close and personal. There's a lot of videos on my channel that are, you know, showing this stuff in high definition. And it's undeniably tree. It's fractal. It's you can pick up a little piece of wood in the forest, and you can hold it up, and right behind it will be something that's 100-foot wide version of the same thing. And then you can look on the ground, and you can see things that look like wood, and they're stone. And you see other things that look like stone, and they're wood. You can't tell them apart. It's uncanny. and it's so beautiful. I mean, the footage that I've shared is fantastic, is from a beauty perspective. But when you're up close and seeing it with your own eyes, it is majestic. It's so undeniable. You have to deny your senses. I coined the term paradigm blindness, because if this is true, why wouldn't all the geologists have seen it? You know, and are they all in on it? Are they all trying to lie to us? Of course not. Most of those people are good people who believe what they believe, but they've been raised academically and literally in life in a paradigm that says such things are impossible. So then when they come across something that's just an obvious, empirical, self-evident example of it, they're blinded to it, because in their world it's not possible. And the same goes for the heart stones. I talked a bit about those last time. A big portion of the research on my channel has to do with having found hundreds and hundreds of examples of what I believe are petrified hearts. And it's not just the shape of the heart. There are highly specific anatomical features. I mean, it's way easier to show this visually than to talk about it. But this is an example of, I was talking about the raining down of body parts from the trees if the plasma event were to occur. Well, what would happen in the body if the body were hit with forces that were thousands and thousands of degrees Celsius? And how it's going to obviously destroy the outer portions of the body. I coined the term boiled egg theory, where the chest and abdominal cavities, where most of our bigger organs are floating in fluid, and they're inside of a big thick fatty chamber, right? So you've got a pressure cooker with water, and the organs are suspended in that, and they're all protected by fatty layers, like an egg is protected by its eggshell. So if you boil an egg in 10 minutes, it's hard inside, right? Well, what happens if the heat is thousands of degrees for longer and it's inside of a pressure cooker? Might that harden organs to the point where they turn to stone? And that's what I believe happened. And a lot of the pebble beaches and what we call cobblestones around the world may have come from that event also, because once they're stone, they're going to stay stone, right?
So just playing devil's advocate, you say a lot of hearts, and I've heard this before. So what would be the reason that gallbladders, kidneys, lungs, what would be the reason that there's so many hearts found, but not other internal organs?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that the heart has the thickest of the protective fatty layers.
Okay.
And it's also very dense, the muscle and the fascial matrix of the heart.
Absolutely. Because the heart has to work or you're dead. Yeah.
One of my subscribers sent me a message several years ago, and he had an Australian Ridgeback dog that he absolutely loved that passed away, and he created a funeral pyre that was 8 feet long, 6 feet tall, and 4 feet wide, made of the hottest burning wood imaginable. I don't know what type it was, but this fire burned for 36 hours. And at the end of the fire, he went to make sure everything was out, and he saw 2 different kinds of ash. There was the ash from the tree, there was the ash from the body. And then he poured some water on, and it exposed a hardened lump, which was the heart. The heart was the only thing that survived that fire for that long.
Wow. In
the body, and it was hard, he said. Now, he may be not telling me the truth, but it ringed authentic when I heard it. So lungs are very porous, so they might not preserve in the same way. Mm-hmm. Gallbladders, kidneys, these are very nondescript stones. I find loads of stones that look like a kidney, with the little C shape and the indentation. But if I start holding up a kidney-shaped rock and say, this was a petrified kidney, people are going to look at me like I'm nuts, right? Yeah. It could be.
But there's no way to compare them with a modern kidney and have enough.
Yeah, you could potentially do a cross-section, and there may be some of the medulla of the kidney might still be there. I actually have a couple of stones that show on the outer portion of the stone that it appears like there's a medulla there. So at some point, they're a little too small. If I need a really thin diamond saw or something to get through it without destroying the stone. But my point is that those other things that you're talking about are there. They're just very nondescript, right? A kidney stone is not so interesting, but a heart has the two biggest blood vessels of the body going in and out of it. It has a very specific shape. It has lines in it. And when we go into rigor mortis on death, the heart contracts so that the sides taper in. And when it's contracting from the bottom, it's twisting because the heart is a vortex, right? So these are very specific features.
Are you referencing the work of the Greek?
No, I'm referencing the work of Francisco Torrent Guasp, who's the cardiologist. In 1972, he discovered the myocardio-ventricular band, which is he was ridiculed by his colleagues for many years for having his theories that, you know, he said the cardiovascular system, as we're taught, makes no sense. The heart is pumping, and then all of the blood is going out to the very ends of the body, comes to a stop, and then turns around and passively just makes its way back in time for the next pump. It doesn't make sense. And the tubes are ever narrowing, which we know from like a fire hose increases pressure, and blood is very viscous. So the circulatory system, if you were just a plumber, you know, made no sense. And so he was trying to figure it out for years and years. And he was dissecting thousands of hearts in his private practice. He lived and worked out of his home, and he would get hearts from the butchers, and he would dissect them, trying to figure out how the hell does this thing work, you know? And then he finally cracked the nut. And the way that he did it was he carefully removed the fatty outer layer of the heart with a scalpel. And then he might have boiled it before that or after. I don't remember. But then he boiled the heart. And when he did that, he was able to bluntly dissect the heart by, sorry, I keep getting messages here. He was able to bluntly dissect the heart using just his fingers and pull it apart. And when he pulls it apart, I can show. I made a 1-minute video just summarizing all of this visually, which I can show.
You can show it if you want to.
Whoops, I just muted you. I tried to mute the. All right, forget it. I don't know how to turn off the notifications. I'll just ignore them. You said something I didn't hear.
Oh, so you can show the video if you want to.
Yeah, I'll show it right now.
Well, I had a guest, the Greek. I believe Big John's already reached out to him. He's going to come back on the channel. It's a really compelling guy, but his take also is the heart is not a pump, and that he's got a whole different take on the entire how the body works, and I want to get deeper into that with him later on.
Okay, let me see. There we go. I'm sharing my screen. So now let me pull this up here, and I'll go to. All right. So presentation mode. There we go. You see that?
Yep, I do.
Reality. That's the title of the presentation that I gave in London. Okay, so here it is. Hopefully you'll hear the sound.
I don't hear any sound.
Oh, you're not hearing sound. Crap. No. Okay, I'm hearing it. So that, I probably have to share with sound. Hold on. Let me back out of that. And where is StreamYard? So share, whoops. Don't leave studio. Stop screen. Share screen again.
I don't know why.
I forgot the also share tab audio. Okay, window. There we go. Share audio, share a tab or screen. Entire screen.
I'll look at the audio too when it pops up on my backside.
There we go. Now it should work. All right. Whoops.
Yeah, it says the audio's on.
Okay. So now I just got to find the file again. All right, here we go.
Did you know that almost everything you were taught about the heart is wrong?
Is it working now?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can hear it.
Most everyone today, even doctors, still believe the heart to be a 4-chamber pump that pushes blood through a mind-boggling 60,000 miles of narrowing blood vessels to fuel our 40 trillion cells, then filling again as if by magic on relaxation. Well, that theory was thoroughly debunked by the Spanish cardiologist Francisco Torrent Guas back in 1972. After dissecting thousands of hearts, Guas finally discovered the heart's true structure. The heart's far more amazing than we ever knew. It's like a rope, a long tube wrapped into a knot. Instead of being pushed, the blood is pulled through the heart in 2 spiraling vortexes. This has been proven with CAT scans, functional MRI, and positronic emission. Look at the spiraling contraction.
So here he's actually, or they're blowing up with gas, a cow's heart. And not only does the blood vortex, but the fibers themselves of the heart are vortexing in opposite directions. And then this is positronic emission up here. I think they use like something radioactive in the blood in order to record this. And here you can also see 2 opposite rotating spirals. So he proved not only that that the blood was vortexing, but that the heart is a band, the myocardioventricular band.
Mike, well, I'm wondering now, just looking at this, that if like insiders in the military industrial complex already know this, if they knew this about the heart, and I'm pretty sure that they already do, then by now they should have developed propulsion systems based off that model, like a toroidal generator, an engine that uses a toroidal field.
Exactly what the heart is. It's a toroid. It's got the biggest electromagnetic field in the body that extends beyond our body. It's way more powerful energetically than the turn off those than the brain. And yeah, I mean, there's probably all kinds of sequestered hidden technology, but this is something this man discovered this in 1972. Let me just finish it. Just a few more seconds here.
Look at the spiraling contraction. It changes everything we know
See
about the heart and
rotating
circulation.
spirals.
If you'd like to know more, check out these videos.
And then going back to here, when you see the contraction of the heart, see how it's twisting?
Pump that pushes blood through a mind-boggling.
That's what it would do on death with rigor mortis. And this line that he's showing right here with his finger, that's a sulcus line. It's a very specific feature. And then when it's contracting, there's a twist from the bottom because of that toroidal
MRI
shape.
And positronic.
So that's let me back out of that one. You're still seeing that, right?
Yeah, I've still seen it.
So this is what hearts look like, right? And they can be bright white. This is the pericardium that protects it, and it can be very thin so that the heart has a lot of color. And this is what's known as a decellularized heart. They're growing hearts in matrices where they basically are growing organs, and then they can introduce the blood later. And I have a video showing, the blood vessels are clamped off, and then when they open the clamps, the blood rushes in, and within 2 seconds, it's looking like this or this. And so this is just giving an indication. And this is just, like human or pig hearts. There's so many different examples of how hearts can look. This is a giraffe on the left, which is long and narrow, just like the giraffe. And this is elephant, big and round. And one of these is pig, one is human. They're hard to tell the difference. And probably in more ways than one. So then, the whole thing started with this rock.
There is a compatibility between porcine organs and human organs. I mean, there are people today that have porcine organs installed in them.
Right. Yeah. So this is the stone that I originally made a video called "Mud Fossils: The Heart of the Matter" because I thought it was a mud fossil, and then I started to doubt that later because I couldn't figure out, well, if the body was buried in mud, why wouldn't it be buried in a petrified body, right? Why would it be found separate from the body? And so I started analyzing this thing. That one stone has 23 different anatomical features. I've gone. This is the isthmus of the coronary of the pulmonary arteries, and that's what this is. And you can see how fleshy it looks. And if you wet this stone, it's red like beef. Wow. And this is on the back upper side. This is the aorta and the vena cava. exactly where they should be. This is that isthmus. And then see this area here, this fatty portion, right? It looks like fat. This is the coronary artery, and this is the coronary sulcus. Those are highly specific features, and they sit right between the left atrium and the left ventricle. So now if I go back to these I showed you before, that's this line here. And see the fat, right? Even this one has it, and then fat accumulates there, and here as well. So what are the odds, right, that rock is going to have so many features? And I started to break it down, and it has 24 different anatomical features. That's a huge number for a mud fossil. I sent a video of that rock to Roger in the very beginning when before I ever made a video on the subject, saying, hey, Roger, this is the best example of a mud fossil that I've ever seen. And I've been watching his channel for a while, and I said, you're welcome to use it. And he never did. He took no interest in it. And then he's made other videos about petrified hearts, and he's not showing anything that looks like this kind of stuff that I've been showing on my channel now for years. Isthmus, isthmus, isthmus. This one here has the aorta opening in the back. It's 1.5 feet long. I have that in my office. Let me just show you some of the best here.
Set them, so I'm not the best of preppers. Anyway, this is a new one.
Aorta vena cava,
you know the routine,
can be a crease, right? It can be an opening.
See the lines.
There's the sulcus line of the folds.
This is also a new one.
They're all tapered in on the sides, which the heart would do when it's in contraction.
For a little less than an hour, I got about 6 of them. But this one, look at this. These are twin flames here. This one is new. Sulcus line, indentation, tapered.
The backside
sulcus line
will be either concave or flat.
Same exact.
Just like that animation I showed you of the heart contracting.
Even down to the sulcus lines.
So that's a high degree of specificity, repeatability,
indentation at the top for the blood
scalability.
Vessels.
And there's even a predictability to it because I found them partially buried.
It's wet. It just looks almost bloody. Same with this, missing a chunk, and on the inside darker red. So yeah, every once in a while I got to go out and get a little inspiration for.
This one here I sliced open, and right across the middle of it, where you would have a big blood vessel in the heart, is petrified or quartz crystal. And my theories early on were that anything that was fat in the body would petrify to quartz, and anything that was sap in the trees would also petrify to quartz.
I want to comment on that. There was in 1877 in New Mexico was discovered a long piece of quartzite, and when it was cleaned and polished, there was a human femur in the upper bones. Their upper bones, ankle bone. It was a right leg. It was a right from the kneecap. The kneecap was in it. It was the kneecap. It was the full lower leg bone all the way to the heel, and half of the foot. It terminated before. It broke off before you could see the human toes. But everybody who had studied it said 100% that's human. And it was slightly larger. It came from a human that stood about 8 foot. And this was on display for a long period of time until about the 1890s. It disappeared. But it has been shown and featured in many books. It was a famous find, and no one doubted that it was a human. It was a human leg and ankle bone, but it was in solid quartzite.
Yeah, Ben, the archivist, has many articles that are talking about like fruits and different kinds of things being petrified to quartz. So, is that an infusion of silica that's coming in? I mean, this is the thing. Opal comes from tree. Obsidian comes from tree.
Wow.
Coal comes from tree. I can show you an example of obsidian coming from tree. Hold on.
So obsidian is not volcanic rock.
Well, what is volcanic rock is a better question.
Huh.
What are volcanoes? I suspect that there we go. let's go back to this.
So without you telling me any further, I just made the mental connection that you have made a connection between volcanoes being ancient tree stumps.
I wouldn't say all of them, but I think a lot of them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, here's a fun one. Here's an example of something that shouldn't exist. Here's petrified whale brain. One is whale and one is dolphin. I don't remember which. But if you notice here, where this chunk is broken away, it's entirely quartz inside. The brain is fat, and that was in alignment with my theories. When we look at, this is a gallstone. You were talking about a gallbladder. These are gallstones in a single gallbladder. When you take a cross section of those, they look just like geodes. How many of the geodes that we see, how many of the agates are tree or things that are in the body? We have kidney stones. We have lymph nodes. There's over, like, I can't remember if it's 300 or 600 lymph nodes in the body. If all of that stuff turned to stone, that could very easily populate the world's beaches and river bottoms and stuff. So, and then you were talking about that leg. I don't know how, people have had this CAT scanned. You've got all kinds of weird anomalies. We talked about them last time. You were showing examples of petrified jellyfish and, fish giving birth or in the process of eating. And, this is very interesting. This just totally debunks, the whole stalactite, stalagmite. It takes 50 to 100 years per centimeter. Right. Watch this short video. This is mind blowing.
I'm about to show you 5 different examples of rock forming quickly. Then I'm going to ask you a question about a dinosaur bone I'm going to show at the end. From Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic, mineralized water went through these pipes and formed this in 80 years. Here's a spark plug in stone, no more than 20 to 40 years to form this. This little guy right here was put into a mineral springs in Karlovy Vary, and within just 6 weeks, it turned to stone. And this right here, this is the same material you find in stalactites and stalagmites in those caves that they say are millions of years old. This right here took 6 months to form. Here's the question. Here's a dinosaur vertebrae. If these right here can form in that length of time, anywhere between weeks to months to years, how long does it take to fossilize a dinosaur bone?
Good
If
question.
the creationists are right, then it's 4,500 years, no older. What do you think?
Hey, I just recently showed last week. Last week I did a video called 649 fossils that prove the scientific dating is BS. So
cool.
In those 649 fossils, 2 of them were, one of them was a Sherman era tank. I don't know if it was exactly a Sherman tank, but it was a World War II tank that had been left exposed and half buried, and now it's encased in solid rock. The other one was a ladder in France from a work site that had been abandoned and in the 1960s, and the ladder is solid petrified stone. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is Mother Shipton's cave. So the high mineral content waters that were causing that accumulation inside the pipes, same thing is happening. It starts in the outsides of the objects that they hang, and within months, it's penetrating and working its way in. We talked about Lichtenberg figures just to give people a visual for it. This is what it looks like when you run current through wood. So my thought is, like if this is how the Grand Canyon formed, some of that stuff is burning away, but the other stuff is aligning itself along the lines of current. So there might be we have monatomic metals in our bloodstream. So it may be that those monatomics are aligning themselves along the lines of current when the plant or the animal gets hit. And if it's a gigantic animal or a gigantic tree, for example, then, if you think about where are they finding the gold and silver, they're finding it in veins. They're finding it in quartz and they're actually seeking out quartz seams to mine for the gold. So I think that the plasma is aligning everything along the lines of current. This is what the Lichtenberg figures look like that we were talking about
right.
before.
Gold and silver is in veins. You're right.
Right. So this is the biggest plasma storm ever recorded. It was, I think, just a few years ago. I don't remember the name of the volcano, but look at this. Now imagine if the whole ring of fire were going off at the same time. How much ash would that spew up? The ash is highly conductive, and that's why you're getting all this crazy electrical activity, right?
Right.
And then this is the Grand Canyon, which is just another Lichtenberg figure. This is a Fresnel's lens, and within seconds, it starts to melt and vitrify a rock. And that's just a magnifying glass. So if we're under a dome, that's a pretty damn big magnifying glass, right? So then this is showing that opal is coming directly from tree. There's this, I don't know where this comes from, but it looks a hell of a lot like meat. Someone sent me these. These were in a bucket below an awning, and the rainwater was going down into the bucket. They petrified in 1 year from rainwater, nothing else. You know, I know you've gone deep into this stuff, but this is just proof, you know, that opal is wood, and I'll show you the obsidian in a moment.
Yeah, I in my video, the 649 fossils that disprove scientific dating, I showed 2 or 3 fossils that were solid opal.
Mm-hmm. So here on the right is copper in its natural state, right? And that has to be extracted for copper wires. But this is rainbow obsidian. You can still see the tree grain in it. And
Wow.
I'm going to show you now. Where is it? Here we go. This is a site in Oregon where you can see all the grain. Now, if this is from flowing fluid, why is it going to have all that micro layering? And then you can see that there's different portions that have vitrified. This almost looks like layers of tree, right? You can see it down there. And then, you know, this is the work of Hangman. It's just phenomenal. The scale of it. This is what you can see the tree grain here. The oxidized portion has been removed, and it's still got the color and the grain of tree. This is what I was talking about before.
That is very compelling. Now, that's a lot smaller though than the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon is 275 miles in length.
Right, but these are, you have to understand that these are tiny chunks of, like, if you imagine a tree. Look here, he's actually got one video where he pulls a chunk away of this, and it still looks fibrous. Wow. So that, right, you can see that the color is still there.
That's amazing.
See, this is what I was saying before. Devil's Tower is a data point. It's not conclusive. And here's the sap. This is where they would look for a larger scale of this, and they would go into that and mine it looking for gold and silver. So that, you know, I've got lots of video. Those are just photographs. Then you've got the marble caves of Patagonia. In the sedimentary layering model to metamorphic rock, marble is metamorphic. How do you get concentric rings? How do you get swirls that look like tree grain? I'm sure they'll come up with an answer to that question, but the question is it far-fetched? And would Occam's razor suggest that maybe things like salt mines, like we're looking at here, were formerly tree? Sure looks like tree to me.
Yeah, it sure does on this side.
Then you see stuff like this. Looks like tree. And if that doesn't look like tree enough for you, check this out.
Yeah.
Tell me 100%. How this forms in a sedimentary layering model. There's just no way. Look at it when he pans back, the detail of that. So you've got one thing that is what it appears to be and may be an Occam's razor explanation. And then you'll have some far-fetched mainstream geological narrative, you know, and I question, even if you do buy the sedimentary layering thing, why would the earth go one color, then back to another? You know, just keep alternating back and forth between these two. This is called banded iron. I think Petra is tree. It's pretty obvious to me when I look at it that I think they carved into these while they were still soft. And this is what Petra looks like from the inside in Jordan. There's no way this is geopolymer, Paul. No way. And then we get into sap, and they tell us that sap is petrified quartz. You want me to keep going with visuals, or you go back
Yeah,
to
that's fine. It looks good.
All right. Okay. So they tell us sap is petrified quartz. Well, guess what? Quartz comes in all kinds of different colors, and so does sap, right? And you see these are more sites from the Black Hills, and you can see that it even looks like tree knots. And what does the sap do? When you cut a tree, the sap comes and it's like the scab of the tree, right? It's making it so the tree doesn't bleed out. And then sap comes in every color imaginable, from red to green to blue. But they tell us amber is petrified sap. But an amber is a 2.5 on the hardness scale. Diamond is a 10. You can dent amber with your finger, right? So if we had real petrified sap that was stone, what would it be? Oh, maybe it would be quartz. And it would have lots of different colors because there's lots of different saps. And here there's a tree that bleeds metal. Then we get into this thing where you get these trees that are tapping into waters below. And obviously the water has to be coming up through channels and then coming out of the knot in the tree. Well, there's these guys named the Action Adventure Twins who are spelunking caves that look exactly like that on the scale that you would expect to find if you're talking about a tree that's miles wide at the base. So, you know, this is the Devil's Tower theory. Someone said that they did LIDAR or something. I've never found the study. I don't know if it's just a rumor, but they claim that there were giant root structures below it. Could be a lie. But this is what these guys are finding. They're going in and they're going down channels like this, 500 feet, hitting a plateau, and then going through snaking passages and finding another channel that goes down another 500 feet. It's absolutely amazing what they're doing. And look at all the layering. You know, oh, is that sedimentary? Well, how did those channels form? If it was water erosion, you know, wouldn't it be smoothed out? But these sites are amazing. And then this gets into the whole idea of what are lava tubes? And I think that the lava tubes are the root structures of the trees, because there should be vitrification if lava is going through here.
There should be lava if lava is going through there.
Good point. And how would lava bifurcate like this into two channels? And oh, wait, let's go back and look at this, because this is, in my mind, a deal breaker. Look at these rings are going this way, right? But here they're horizontal. So how does that happen? Here they're going this way. So what are lava tubes? What are tepuis? You know, these structures. And where does the water come from? It's not rain. There's no way it could be rain. So where does that water come from? They call them artesian wells. Interesting that they use the word artery, right? Artesian.
Yep.
So is it possible that this is just part of a giant tree that still is tapping in to the waters below? And I think so. You know, I think, you know, there's merit to all of these different theories: ancient miners, titans, mud floods, mud fossils, petrified organs. I'll add meltology to this, because I was originally mocking the meltologists because they were trying to say that every single mountain on Earth was a former building. And it's just like, there's so many structures that's absolutely absurd about. But over the years, those guys have amassed a lot of interesting imagery that suggests that meltology is also a thing. So I think we should all try and get along better and you know, understand that this world is probably a lot more complex than we can know. Wait a minute, I'll come back to that in a second. But we were talking about Yggdrasil and the world tree. We're talking about, you know, Rupus Negra, our compasses point to this point, and the concentric sphere idea. The ancient cosmologies were all like this, except for NASA, right? And so I think we talked about the toroid. This is what lava does. No straight lines anywhere. But they want us to believe because it cooled rapidly that it suddenly formed stuff like this. And I reject the notion. I think it's absurd.
Yeah,
we've got no in between stages. We can't witness it happening. It happened ages ago, and it's just more trust me, bro.
are you
But
talking
it's
about
sure-
evolution?
Devolution.
Yeah, yeah.
And then even if you buy the story, then how the hell does this happen? I'm sorry, but you know, rapidly cooling lava cannot explain this.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either.
Right.
So what you're showing me evidence that we're in an iteration of the sim where we have been made so tiny because the controllers of this experience needed to make a world that was far smaller in order to have such a massive population we have inside the construct right now. But in the past, we didn't have that massive population. It seems like our world is built upon the previous structures of fossil sims. That's what you're showing me. You're showing me programming residue from previous sims.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and if you buy the sedimentary layering model that they give us, that simple petrogenesis idea, how do you explain these kinds of structures? This looks cellular. This looks like meat, right? You've got these are the concretions that are found all over. What if these are giant seeds from trees, or what if they're giant stones from the body? You know, a bezoar grows inside of a cow or a horse, and it's a kidney stone that can be the size of a baseball. Well, what if the creature was way bigger? How big would that stone be? You know, and then even if you can come up with explanations for that, I challenge any geologist to explain this structure. You've got all these layering, and then this goes up through what looks like cellular structure, but the layers go up through it. Like, what in the heck is going on there? I don't know. But this is White Pocket. You know, these aren't faked graphics. These are photos that I gathered long before AI took off and started fooling everybody. I've had most of the stuff I've shown you. I've had for several years now. Before, you know, it's not AI fakery. And then this one you're going to love as well. Mount St. Helens sedimentary layering model debunked. What you're seeing here happened in hours. Check this out.
As the grains were being propelled over the surface in a slurry, the particles separated coarse and fine into thin layers. I had thought that a catastrophe would mix up all the particles and make a homogenized deposit. Boy, was I wrong. Right here, a pyroclastic flow moving at freeway speed or higher can separate particles into coarse and fine. So layering doesn't require millions of years, thousands of years, or even hundreds of years. It can form rapidly in this slurry flow process. So Mount St. Helens tells us something really interesting about how rapidly strata can form.
Right.
There's even micro thin lamination in this deposit. It's remarkable.
That happened in hours. So sedimentary layering model debunked by geology. That was a geologist showing that can happen very quickly. So if 1,000 volcanoes across the world were exploding violently, how much ash, how much lava, how much slurry flows, You just described
the creation of a vapor canopy, because vapor canopy, the only way to create one is volcanism.
Right. And so then that leads us back to where we started, which is this mountain, which was how it all started for me. Looks like an elephant, but maybe not to everybody. But when I got on Google Earth, I could see ribs, I could see what looked like a spine. There's this curve here and a curve here, right where the head would meet the shoulders. The eye socket's in the right place, and then there's a deep canyon right here between where the legs would be. So I was approaching it as scientifically as I could. I got out my anatomy books. I got online. I found photographs of elephant skulls. I found a HD footage of the elephant skull. And then, we have a hole here in our skull, and they have it there, and it's bigger, and it's kind of in front of the eye. Well, if the head were tilted back, that would be perpendicular to the eye. And I got on Google Earth, and I could see a cave that looked like the eye socket. And then I could see another cave that was running perpendicularly. And this is what it looks like, looking through it. What are the odds? How specific is that feature? These these lines here, this line here is also in the mountain. And then you can see here that location of this structure. And then looking at the anatomy of the eye socket, there's even a deeper cave. There, just like you see these fissures here, inside the cave, there's angles going down, just like you see here, in the cave. And then when you go down those angles, there's a channel, and you can go into a deeper cave that is exactly where the sinuses would be. I'm like, you can't make this shit up. Either it's just a simulation that's messing with me, or I'm looking at the remains of something.
So I could also add a little value to this. I'm sure you've already thought about it, but could any nuances or variances that deviate from your model of an elephant, could that be accounted for, the differences that are also between the mastodon and the mammoth?
Well, you know, pachyderms in general, like those are what you described are pachyderms, but so is an anteater. There's a lot of different species this could be. Someone even said it looks like a whale, and a whale's a vertebrate also. Okay. You know, so I'm not attached to it being specifically an elephant. It's known locally to people as Montgo, but it's also the elephant. So here's three more highly specific features. So this is not the eye socket. This is the temporal muscle. This is the eye. See this line here?
Yeah.
Okay. That line is in, if you were to go into the cave and then look towards this point, this is what you see in that exact location. See how it juts upward right there? It does that as well.
Wow.
Like, what the heck? What, and then here, this is the optic fissure where the optic nerve goes in the cave. Right in that exact location is this structure. I kid you not.
That's pretty compelling right there, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I looked at this structure early on, and I thought that looks like the remains of the eyeball, because when the plasma event happens or whatever it is, obviously something soft like the eyeball is going to blow out as the petrification process is happening. But maybe the backside would stay anchored in the eye socket, right? And so I found out later. I took Andreas Exertus and Victor Bugge, a couple of friends. Well, you might know who Andreas is, but I took them up there and I started showing them this stuff. And one of them noticed that the whole backside of this structure was covered in a 10-inch thick layer of quartz. And that layer of quartz is exactly what I had hypothesized, that fat would petrify to quartz. So if the back of the eyeball was anchored in, the back side of that would be the sclera, which is the white of the eye, which is fat. And then it got truly surreal, because this quarter moon shape here on the mountain, I found out later, there's a cave right here. And that cave had been excavated by a team of archaeologists and geologists. And they went in with LiDAR. They went in 3D mapped. They did 3D filming. And they got in there, and there were skeletons, and there were cave paintings. You got to see this. This is crazy. Huh. Almost like an ear canal. And here it looks like he's going around a turn. Looked like a cochlea. And here's the fly-through in 3D. I didn't even know the cave existed until I went looking for it. And when I was looking for the road name to go up the canyon, I saw this link. Oh, here you're looking at what looks like deluge and four-legged creatures with horns. Like falling from the sky. Doesn't that look like an apocalypse?
Yeah.
And this is all broken fragments of limestone, and we talked about that before. But this is what the back side of the eyeball looks like. And this is covered in quartz, which is totally in alignment with the theory that this would have petrified to quartz, and that's what that is. So, and then if that's not enough for you, this happened between my 4th and 5th video. Google Earth was modified so that I was using it as a drone, and I had gone hundreds of times to Google Earth, And next thing I knew, the eye and the ear were blurred out, and it looks like it was done by hand. So this is the before. That's how it should. That's how it should look.
We have AI monitors that are flagging the things that were. I'll give you a perfect example of what you just described. Recently, I was trying to use Google to find any images of dinosaur tracks close to anywhere where we find double rail tracks called cart tracks in different areas of the world. It was the subject matter of my video yesterday. Once Google realized I was trying to make a connection between dinosaur tracks, human footprint tracks, and these rail tracks, it wasn't giving me any more output. I had to change browsers and go to Bing. Once I went to Bing, I was able to pull up a lot more images. But Google evidently has AI, and once it realized I was trying to make this connection, it would not give me any more examples. It was giving me a bunch of BS, and I was going to I couldn't find anything. And that's why I don't like using those AI ideas.
I haven't used Google for a long time.
They're trash, man. They're trash.
So this is what I was talking about before with the different types of bone, and the cortical bone would be the hard section, and then this is the trabecular, and this is under a microscope, and this is where blood is formed. And so this is what the rock looks like all over the mountain. You can see that there's quartz in there. You've got red earth, and then there's lots of iron ore. And then these channels are bifurcating. They're branching in different directions. The official story is that this is formed by water erosion, that there are rivulets that form as it rains that start to spread out more and more to create these channels. But how then can you get smaller channels going off in other directions from the main channels? It doesn't make any sense. And here's a big rock where this would be cortical bone, very little in the way of the blood vessels, right? You can see there's one going in there. And this chunk is broken away, and look at what's coming out of that channel. It just goes on and on and on. So there's over 50 anatomical histological correlations. You can pause it and read those if you want, to those who are watching. Yeah, I mean, if you think about games of chance, it's pretty odd. And then when it comes to heartstones, I've had people send them to me from all over the world. It's a very, very repeatable phenomenon that's very specific to heart anatomy. It's not mentioned in the geological record. It's not mentioned by Roger Spur, nor has he ever mentioned my mountain, or has he talked about the trees. And so I'm suspicious of all three of those things. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and trust him, but I think he needs to get off the ball and get on the ball.
Well, you already know that the uniformitarian model of the solar system, heliocentric, and the uniformitarian dating system of everything being millions and hundreds of millions of years old, this is what people are programmed to believe since they're a child. I mean, toy sections are full of dinosaurs. Toy sections are full of rocket ships. Toy sections are full. I mean, you're already saturated it before you even make it to the school. Before you even enter kindergarten, your cartoons and toy sections have already programmed you to believe in these models. So I understand.
Paradigm blindness.
I get it. The people the people are slaved to these models. So they process all new information through those same models, and that's what they're designed to do, because you're never going to be able to get to the truth if your processing filters are corrupted.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should all be like stuff. Toto and pull back the veil, right?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
As I said in my presentation in London, like, it wasn't Dorothy that figured out that the guy was, manipulating levers from behind the curtain. It was Toto, right? He sniffed him out, and he knew there was something fishy going on, and he pulled back the veil. So we need to be like Toto, not Dorothy.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah,
I will buy that for $1.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Man.
We can keep going. I've got loads of more to share, but people can go check out the videos on my channel.
Essentially, we're dealing with the only way I can process this, because I'm able I'm able to disengage from my own ARCHAIX paradigm, which only goes back to 5239 BC. I only stick with the human historical record. That's my research. But I'm able to disengage from that and entertain what you have found and see the value of it if I can add to that paradigm that 5239 BC started a whole new sim. But I agree that the world is much older. So you have provided, and Roger Mudfossil have provided, windows into that world before the human historical record began. So I mean, this is just my take. Now I understand your take is that a lot of things that you're seeing was the Great Flood, and I just don't see it that way, because we have a lot of antediluvian artifacts where humans were the same size as we are today. So I'm seeing this Titan age as being much earlier. And I don't mean millions of years. I'm talking about thousands. Just I see it being much earlier than the 3rd century BC. But other than that, man, I'm on board. I'm absolutely on board. These giant trees and all that, because I see that if we were going to build, if you and I are on the outside of the construct and we're scientific engineers and we know we've already built many other constructs, and we know that we have this amazing hyperdimensional software that's going to allow us as intelligences to be introduced into our own designs and borrow avatars that belong to the programming of the construct. We know that in order to make that construct believable to those that are on the inside, it's like a memory wipe. Once you're inside, you don't remember that you're from the outside. But in order to make it believable, because you're still equally intelligent, you have to introduce all kinds of background programming, and the best way to do it is like you just showed. Here is a huge world full of gigantic trees and gigantic animals, but to themselves they're not gigantic. But if you want to produce the oil, you want to produce the coal, you want to produce all the mysteries in geology and make that world as believable as possible, you end that sim in a cataclysm, and then you introduce the new sim where life forms are smaller. Do it again. Introduce the life forms that are smaller. Now you have a back history of phenomena that is so mysterious, most people, unless they're Stellium 7, are even going to figure it out, what was going on. So what I'm saying is, this is an experience that is technological. We exist on the outside of this experience. We have decided to participate in our own experience, but in order for it to be believable, we had to make a believable environment, which has enough background programming. These are programming fossils from previous sims. These are all things I've talked about in the last 5 years. That's why what you're showing me is something I can be on board with. Absolutely.
And everything that you just said would apply to a created realm where we incarnate. Also,
I'm not.
Like,
I'm
not.
100%.
I'm not on either fence. You know.
No, hold on. No, but you're making an illusion here. We need to be clear. Listen, I am all about God. I am all about the oversoul. I believe that we are immortals participating in this. I am. Yeah. Don't ever think that my simulation theory concept has anything to do with some godless notion. It does not at all. Those who listen to ARCHAIX know that my material also has great spiritual value.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of people that, like in the flat Earth community, that had big time problems with the whole simulation thing. There were a lot of people who were, you know, criticizing your work early on because of that, and I never had a problem with it. I'm like, well, at the very least, this is a simulation in the mind of God. You know, consciousness precedes matter, and we are incarnating into a physical realm. And I believe we're spiritual beings, you know, and that there are outside of this enclosure that we're in, it may be non-corporeal, right? That you can't exist there physically. So there we're spirit, here we're matter, but it's all coming from God. So whether it's,
Absolutely.
you know, a matrix-like simulation or just an imagining of God, you know, it doesn't really matter. There's no reason to like get up in arms about that subject. I don't see one anyway.
Absolutely. What time is it in Spain right now?
It's 11:30. Tomorrow's my first day back to work after a month, so
oh man,
it'll be nice.
all the traveling's done. Yeah.
A couple little things to wrap up one, I just want to point out also, trees versus animals in a forest. There are way, way more trees than animals.
Absolutely.
So what would you expect to find way more of?
You're going,
Tree.
yes, you're going,
Like
you're going
there's
to find
so
more
much evidence for
wood.
tree around the world. When you have the eyes to see it, Hangman 1128 has been showing it for years. So have I. You know, some people think everything is geopolymer, but I think it's all of the above, and people need to open their minds and not be such jerks.
Yeah. So I'm going to add to that.
And I'm gonna. Oh yeah, go ahead.
There are more trees than animals, but by the same analysis, there are a lot more animals than humans. So we can't dismiss the fact that the world, this titanic, gigantic world of antiquity, pre-ARCHAIX paradigm, would not also have a more titanic type human. I'm not going to say it wouldn't. I haven't seen one, but if they were already experimenting with the avatar for different biospheres, then I'm pretty sure there would be giant humans in that world as well, but they would be so infrequent.
Right.
So you're right. You would see evidence of the trees and the topaz and the opal fossils and amber and all that. You would see that a lot more than you would see any evidence of animals. So finding that elephant is definitely momentous.
Well, and I would have thought by now there'd be way more like examples, because people are still just showing pictures of mountainscapes that look like a face, and there's no follow-up at all. You know, I thought there would be other titans that were investigated, and you know, by now. So when it comes to my order of importance, when I think of the research, I'm most convinced of the great trees. There's so much evidence for them. Then number two for me are the heartstones, because they're very empirical. It's very repeatable. It's not discussed in the geological record. And then the mountain, even though I've got 50 correlations that I've shown, and there seems to be Google or censorship, I still have my doubts when I look at that thing. Like, how can it be? You know, and I mean, other people are fully convinced. I took people up yesterday, and I asked some friends after I took them up there, how much do you believe that this is a Titan after seeing everything I showed you? And they're like, 110%. Are they gullible, or am I just way too hard to convince, even though it's my own research, you know? But the trees and the heartstone, these are very compelling findings. And also a lot of what, you know, Roger's talked about over the years. I'm not, like I said, I'm not criticizing him. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his ideas initially. And I'm not abandoning those ideas. I just expanded on them, and I think he needs to do the same. And then I just want to say synchronicity has followed me through this whole thing. So there's like a supernatural quality to this that I could literally do, you know, talk to you for 2 or 3 hours just about synchronicities related to the research. And one of the biggest ones of all, I showed you the heart, and I showed you the band, and I talked about the doctor. This man lived and worked his entire career out of private practice, and he was going to the butchers to get these hearts and trying to figure it out, and figured it out eventually. His home was on the foothills of Mont Go.
Okay.
He lived and worked his entire career on the Elephant Mountain.
Wow.
What are the odds of that? And then as I was watching the documentary about his life, and I saw that animation of the twisting heart, I realized that the backside of a bunch of the stones that I had was curved inward. I never thought about the heart goes concave on the backside, and it's faceted on the front. You know, it's like it's curved or faceted. And then looking from the bottom, it twists like this because of the vortexing of the fibers and the blood. And then there was that line, that curved line, which is the sulcus line. When he unwraps it and he rolls it back up, I saw that documentary and I was like, I've seen those features before. And I ran to the collection and I had never noticed them. I just thought they were anomalies in the stone. But the stones that I had already gathered that matched the rest of the pattern had those features as well. And I showed those in that little short clip that I showed. But like, what are the odds of that? You know, and the whole reason I discovered those features of the stone was because of this documentary that I watched, because someone on my channel made the comment that the heart is a rope. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? You know, and then someone said the heart is a rope, the helical heart. And I looked for the helical heart and I found this documentary. And I studied a lot of anatomy, and I was very interested in the heart in chiropractic college. Didn't know anything about that. Guess what? Cardiologists today still don't know about it. It's not
They're-
taught.
yeah, they're
That should
not
be
going-
the foundational teaching of the cardiology program, is the
Big
true
Pharma
nature of
is
the
never
heart.
going to allow that to be known in the collective.
There are people, there's surgeons cutting into hearts that
Yeah.
don't know that basic stuff.
Yeah, Big
They
Pharma.
might
Big
pay some
Pharma's
lip
not going to let
service
that
to it.
information go public. They're just not.
Yeah, so that's just one of zillions of synchronicities. I'll tell you another synchronicity. Every one of these speaking engagements that I've gone to in the last 2 years, in a very indirect way, is because of you.
Yeah, I know you mentioned a bunch of people that I've done podcasts or meetups with.
But not for that reason. So I went to Anarchapulco the year before last.
Yeah.
I took your slot because Don was sick.
Yeah.
So you were supposed to be there. I wouldn't have been there if not for you. And there I met Mike Winner of Alpha Vedic, who you've interviewed with many times, and I love those
Great
guys.
guy.
And because we were hanging out together, he invited me to Music and Sky, and then from there I went
I was
to
supposed
Serbia.
to be there too.
Yes, you were, and that was an interesting story as well. So,
Yep.
so our stories have intertwined in a variety of different ways, and this is a great segue into. People will not like me making light of this, but we're both ex-cons also.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, do you have a copy of your latest book?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And it's a sales pitch here. So this is a book 40 years in the making that just came out 6 days ago on the 17th of September. And let's see, I'll just leave that and you can pause it to read those awesome quotes from the backside. Is that reversed? It's reversed on my screen.
Oh, no, we can see it fine. We can see it fine.
You can. Oh, it's reversed.
As a matter of fact, show it to the screen real quick. I'm going to remove me.
Yeah. So the Hacker Prince, it's all a true story. Chronicles the events that took place in my life between basically 12 and 19 years old, where I got into computers. I was a hobbyist and then eventually became a hacker, and was flying around the country, hanging out with other hackers, had lots of crazy things happen to me from like 16 to 18. And then I got busted in 1985 for infiltrating Microsoft and Boeing. And that led to a court case and a conviction. And so I went to jail for the crime of hacking when I was 19 years old. I was the first hacker in the world to go to jail for the crime of hacking. I walked away from it all. I never did interviews. I never told the story until now. And the only person I've ever interviewed with about this was Andreas Exertus, and it was just little scene, but yeah. Oh, thank you for posting the Amazon link, Mr. Sia. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's available in Kindle and paperback formats. Over the next month or two, I'm going to put together audiobook and start working on a screenplay, because everyone who's read it says it should be a movie. And
Sounds like it.
The forward to my book was written by Gary McKinnon, who's one of the most famous hackers. He's known as the UFO hacker. He broke into NASA, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense in 2001. He got caught. They were trying to extradite him for over a decade, and they failed. Theresa May ratified the extradition treaty, and so he's safe in the UK, but he can't leave the country. He's been there for 25 years straight because all of the other countries that he would go to still have those treaties with the US. So
it's like Edward Snowden.
Yeah, similar kind of thing. Yeah, so he actually, the way I came across him was he watched one of my videos and posted a comment on my channel, and I recognized his name, and I'm like, is that the Gary McKinnon? I couldn't believe it. So
Yeah.
I sent him a message and I asked him, this is so cool you're here. Thank you, for commenting. And I asked him, like, did you know about this? And I sent him a 3-minute video, which should we play it?
Sure, go ahead.
This is a promotional video that I made for a Kickstarter campaign that I spent a whole lot of time on and then didn't spend any time attempting to promote it, which is kind of exactly what I've done with my book. It's been launched after 40 years with zero fanfare until this conversation. Yeah, and so here we go. This is just the promo to the Hacker Prince.
In February 1985, an 18-year-old Kirkland, Washington man pled guilty to 4 counts of computer trespass. The defendant was accused of gaining illegal access to 4 large Seattle area firms. Would you state your name, please?
My name is Mike Wilkerson. Usually they have the way it's set up is you dial in on one line and it calls you back on another, so that you can't. It's supposed to be the ultimate security. But what you do is you break into Cosmos and you find out all of the phone numbers that company owns, and you call until you find the 2 that are hooked up to data, and then you get the callback modem and you set up call forwarding on that line, so it call forwards to your home number. That takes a lot of work, but
That's a whole other chapter of the story.
you haven't been caught. You have this invulnerable feeling. You just don't think you're going to get caught. You ask any hacker out there that hasn't been caught yet if he thinks he's going to get caught, and he'll tell you no. And if they tell you yes, it's because somebody close to them just recently got busted, and they have a feeling they're being watched.
Whether you're curious about the 80s hacking scene and some of its most infamous characters, or if you care to indulge in a bit of nostalgia for the early days of computing, or if you just simply like to kick back with a light-hearted coming-of-age tale, then this book is for you.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good, man.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's pretty
I
good. I
spent
like
a lot
that.
of time on that.
You're famous. That's awesome.
Not yet.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Maybe someday. Yeah, no, I literally have. It's on Wikipedia, and I'm like the only. Well, not the only one, but of the well-known hackers that are kind of significant in the chronology, I'm the only one. I'm like number 2 on the list if you sort by date, and there's not even a link to my name yet. So it's it's a crazy story. It's a very entertaining read. I've had about 10 different authors have read it and have had really great things to say about the writing, and it's a page turner. And Steve Young said it read like a movie.
Yeah, well, do me a favor, send me the Amazon link to my email. I'll order it right now. As soon as the show's over. I have a collection of books from people that I've met at meetups, other authors, other YouTubers that have their books. Yeah,
I would just send it to you, but they're gouging us with anything coming in or out of this US or the UK right now.
Yeah.
A friend sent me his books. I paid more for import tax than I would have paid to buy the books on Amazon and have them sent to me.
I know.
So
I
it's
know.
just
My problem
ridiculous.
with people ordering from New Zealand and Australia, I have those problems too. Sometimes they're the postage is more than the books themselves. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly what happened. Friend sent me 6 of his books. I paid 95 euros in import tax. He paid 50 or 60 just to send them, and then the cost of the production of the books as well. So it's just like,
Yeah, it's
I'm
ridiculous.
not even bothering to send or receive anything from the States until this changes. But
Yeah, it's so crazy. Well, we've been going 2 hours and 38 minutes. This has been a great talk. But I
Yeah, it's
knocked
been a
down
lot
a
of
pot of
fun.
coffee before we even started. I'd already knocked down a pot of coffee, so I've been holding my bladder pretty good. I even drank one in here. So
somebody's sending me binary in the chat. Secret codes.
Poppin' Sons. Oh yeah,
Gotta send it through a binary decoder now.
it'll
Wonder
say
what-
something. He'll probably say
it'll say
good
something.
work.
Hope it says something nice.
Well, it's only nine deals here, so it probably says good work
Right.
or something like that.
Cool.
Poppin' Sons. I see you, man. All right.
Well, thank you all for watching, and check out my channel. There's so much more, especially after I get back from the Black Hills, traveling with Hangman. I put out about a dozen little 2-minute clips of the absolute best footage. So if you're short on time, you don't want to pour through my multi-hour streams, go to those and just watch those. And I showed photos, but that's high def footage, and it's just breathtaking.
Man, Mike, you're talking to the ARCHAIX community. They're used to 3, 4, and 5 hour streams.
Right. I forgot. Well, no, I have to say, the last interview we did, a lot of people came to my channel, and I've done interviews where I've gotten a bunch of subs, and then they're bookmarking it for later. But the people from your channel came to the channel and started churning through the content, and they were very appreciative and interactive, and so thumbs up to the ARCHAIX.
I was on there this morning.
You guys are great.
All right. Well, Mike's links. He's got a lot of links. I think I saw 6 of them. The first one is the YouTube channel, then all the other social medias. I think you're also on Odyssey,
on
Rumble,
Subs,
BitChute.
yeah. Substack, X, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, YouTube. They're all Stellium 7. So.
Well, they're all linked in the description box right now.
Okay, great.
I put them there. I put them there when I set the video up. So my community can find you really, really fast and really easy. So you got any final thoughts? Because I'm about to terminate this and go straight
terminate it. The Terminator. Nice talking with you.
All right, Mike.
Bye,
Till next time.
Bye.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's an awesome revelation. It really is. But like I said, that was a great guest. He's been here before. He will be back, and all his links are in the description box. And it is kind of mind numbing. I mean, there's no data here that would get me to balk. There's no information here that would get me to say, oh no, man, this gotta be wrong. I can't find it. But history is a very big place, and it's just my personal opinion that these titanic discoveries, these giant forests and all that, it's going to be the 6th millennium BC or before that. Because when it comes to the human historical record, things are pretty much well defined from 5239 on back. I could be wrong, because we do have a very major cataclysmic event in 3895 BC, which is so well documented on my channel. So we could have the end of that giant trees and giant titanic life forms in the 3895 BC event as well. So something for us to look forward to, something to look at. I know a lot of my ARCHAIX veterans know where I'm going with that. It's something to look at, but there's nothing here in this guest material that I can offer counterpoints to, because it's very relevant to the diminishing of the ecosphere. The ecosphere seems to have more and more life forms the more it progresses, but they get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's very interesting. So until later, guys, I'm gonna hit this badass song. You recently heard it, Mr. Traumatic dedicated this to ARCHAIX. Go ahead and play it again. That'll be our outro for the day. You can build whatever world you want. You change your frequency, you will change your world. Reality will always build for you the world that is commensurate with how you see yourself.
Wow. I'm not the physical body, I'm the immortal within. Facts. So when my DNA skin suit dies, you can stick my corpse in a bin. Do it. You can just cremate me, I don't care if you're scorching my skin. Cause I'm infinite consciousness in a cosmic ocean, I snorkel and swim. Wow. Life is a game, I'm certain, I have no doubts, of course I will win. Yeah. Ask about me, checkmate. I don't watch porn, I'm a king. Checkmate. And I don't drink from the tap, you know that water's grim. Fluoride's a neurotoxin, your pineal gland's absorbing it in. Yes. And if you think chemtrails are engine fumes, you're awfully dim. I'm not a yes man, I'm authentic, I don't force anything. I don't believe in fate or luck, it's not an unfortunate thing. Never. I'm not stressing, life is a blessing, no one is born into sin. The devil's been tempting me, but I'm not talking to him. I'll stick my sword in his limb and swing my fist full force in his chin. Been battling demons for ages now, I'm going to war with the jinn. So if they happen to kill me, I'll be going out with a glorious grin. The demons are knocking, they've been scheming and plotting. Those toxic chemicals up in the sky will leave you sneezing and coughing. The reason is shocking, I bet you'll be breathing a lot in. That poison inside the vaccine will leave your blood cells bleeding and clotting. I don't do religious scriptures, that's why I don't read the Kabbalion. This world is being controlled by a twisted, devilish, evil battalion. I'm a champion, I don't need a medallion, I just need to be valiant. I'm bareback in reality, so I don't need no weed or Valium. I'm completely sober, I don't do shrooms and I don't swallow beer. I'm not your average human being, I'm positive, I don't follow fear. I love the world we live in, but all I'm seeing is pain and sorrow here. Welcome to the pits of hell, it's a digital quantum hollow sphere. I don't trust nobody, people's hearts are so cold and shallow. But I'm on a path to greatness, I don't care if the roads are narrow. I'm always ready for battle, I've been stockpiling loads of ammo. The thoughts I'm thinking they're twisted, gruesome, horrible, gross and paro. I've been stuck in a spiral dimension, a war with these floating shadows. I've been fighting devils and demons, using these poisonous bows and arrows. If I die and I leave this place, I'll fly in the sky with the crows and sparrows. I don't mind if you bury my body right next to my potatoes and marrows. The demons are knocking, they've been scheming and plotting. Those toxic chemicals up in the sky will leave you sneezing and coughing. The reason is shocking, I bet you'll be breathing a lot in. That poison inside the vaccine will leave your blood cells bleeding and clotting. The demons are knocking, they've been scheming and plotting. These toxic chemicals up in the sky will leave you sneezing and coughing. The reason is shocking, I bet you'll be breathing a lot in. That poison inside the vaccine will leave your blood cells bleeding and clotting. The demons are knocking, they've been scheming and plotting. These toxic chemicals up in the sky will leave you sneezing and coughing. The reason is shocking, I bet you'll be breathing a lot in. That poison inside the vaccine will leave your blood cells bleeding and clotting.
The self-aware immortal is a non-local awareness, limitless, timeless, with the creative tools of imagination and intuition. Intuition and imagination used together can create anything. You can build whatever world you want. You change your frequency, you will change your world. Reality will always build for you the world that is commensurate with how you see yourself.